3, 2, 1. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Offshore Live number 13.
Yeah, I'm Lindsey Peary. I'm from Port Republic, New Jersey, formerly of Harvey Cedars, New Jersey.
Steve Schoderer. I lived in Barnegat Light for a number of years. I now reside in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What are you doing up here?
I don't know.
Come to see you.
That's crazy.
My niece got married, and I came up for the wedding.
Oh, okay. Well, congratulations.
Well, thanks.
I can't believe you left paradise, though.
It's cold up here.
It is cold up here. It's no fun. But so, and famously known for Indigo Offshore Racing,
Right.
And great to have you guys in, man. It's an honor.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure, really.
So, and it's kind of cool because, truthfully, I didn't know you guys were based out of Long Beach Island.
Yeah.
I didn't know until I was talking to Johnny Stanch. I always knew the boats and knew you were, Jersey guys, but I never knew you were from Long Beach Island, and that's where I spent all my summers.
Yeah.
So kind of cool.
Yeah, my friend Christian showed me your video the other day, your podcast, and here's my friend Johnny Stanch on there. I hadn't seen him in years, and he's talking about Harvey Cedars and me, and I said, man, this is cool. So, and his story, when you asked him his story, he started off as a kid talking about hearing the sound of the boats. And that happened to me. I wasn't a kid. I was like 30. And I heard the sound of the boats coming over the dune. And I ran up there and I saw real fast boats. Couldn't make out what they were doing because they were way out. That's back in the day of offshore.
Right.
And at another time, then we went out and we rented a boat one time. And we got right in the middle of the race course. And I said, that's what I want to do.
Right.
The rest of the story, it's in that album, and Steve and I, we can fill in all the gaps in between.
Well, so how did you get started though? So not just hearing the boats and everything. Where'd you start? What was your?
Well, he and I used to ride dirt bikes together all the time. So that's loud and dangerous and illegal and speedy, which is right down our alley.
Right. Perfect.
So we and he worked for Mercury and he did his thing, and I fixed fiberglass boats on Long Beach Island. And then through we had a hurricane in 1976 called Hurricane Bell, and one of the summer people was a friend of ours from the firehouse. He gave us a boat, and the picture of it is in that album. It was sunken, it was beat up, so we fixed it up. What was that, a Fiberform, Steve?
Fiberform, yeah.
Yeah, old Blue Eyes. Anyway, we fixed it up, and then we were going to use it, sell it. We didn't know yet, and then an insurance company wanted me to go look at a boat that was damaged in a fire up in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. So I went up there and I saw it. It was in the warehouse, and it was burned pretty bad. It was a Wellcraft Scarab. It had 2 engines in it. So I told Steve about it, and
I said he was nuts if he was going to go racing.
yeah, well, no. So I wrote them an estimate, and it was going to be like at that time $25,000. It's a lot. It was a lot of money back then.
Right.
To fix it, and then they contacted me and said, "Would you like to buy it?" So what did we buy? $2,500 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Wasn't much. So we sold the Fiberform, and that's what gave us the money to go buy the Indigo. So
Right.
I brought it home to my house.
So Indigo started off as a fire job?
Oh yeah, all the pictures are in the album. It was burnt, not beyond recognition, but real bad, and. So I started taking it apart, and I'll try to speed it up. I took it all apart, took the deck off because it was burnt. We threw that away. I went down to Sarasota to Wellcraft, and a friend of mine knew the owner and what have you, and I bought a deck and brought it up on a trailer, a new deck, and then I Kevlar'd I ground the whole hull out, had it sandblasted so I could lift the corner up myself.
Right.
It was like 3 blocks, one in the front and one on each side.
Right.
I could lift it up. That's how thin it was. So that became a mold for me.
Right.
And I used Kevlar and good plywood and good building practices and built a boat that is still pretty tough to this day, right, Christian? It's still out there, yeah. So that's how that got going. Then we modified it. There's all sorts of little things. Every time we lost a race, we thought we were going to race and win because we were hot stuff. And we had to learn the hard way. So
right.
he would give me little tips of, why don't you try this and try that? So I worked my way along.
Right. And then your background at the time was engines primarily, right?
Right. I worked for Mercury Marine from 1971 till 2015. I just retired. So
Wow.
after 44 years working for that company, I got to see a lot of stuff that nobody else could.
That's one hell of a stretch.
And well, it is, and it's you'll never see that again.
No.
I mean, they go through people left and right.
Well,
But
and with-
my father used to work for Carl Keycaper.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, talk about a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
So what's so cool about that particular thing is when you worked for Mercury through the late 80s, the 90s, into the 2000s, where you were there till 2015, so you witnessed the 1550, the 1650 come through,
Sure.
All the big turbo motors and stuff. How crazy was that to see the innovation through the years?
Well, think about what the stern drive did to that Wellcraft. That Wellcraft ran 55 miles an hour. I was on that boat when it was floating at the Philadelphia Boat Show. I'm thinking, oh, okay, another Scarab. That's, yeah.
Right.
Because I eventually handled Wellcraft, and Wellcraft at their time, they would have 60 Scarabs in production, all transom to transom. So that was kind of neat to watch.
That's cool.
And so the metamorphosis of the engines, racing was involved with both stern drive and outboard, and their real love was outboard. But then there were some management changes, and they started coming up with the higher horsepower stuff. And
Right.
how much horsepower? It's like
Yeah.
a friend of mine worked on the 525 project. He's still a good friend today. And we were down at Lake X, and he's testing the boat or the engine. And he says, "What problems are you seeing out there?" Now, I don't work for racing, but I said, "There's a steam issue in the manifolds. You want to vent steam out of there." Next set of headers he had, there was a pipe that went up to the tailpipe. So it was that type of thing. People would shoot stuff back and forth and come up with ideas, and that's how the boat thing started. I got to tell you about the boat, though.
Yeah,
the boat, when I first saw it, was on a trailer. A third, maybe a little bit more than a third of the starboard side was gone. It was burned. They were taking a shovel and shoveling all the interior out of it into a dumpster. And I'm thinking, this is going to be a project. This is going to be a big deal. And that's when I first saw that boat. And that's why I told him, "You're nuts."
Had the mirrored ceilings in it.
Right.
Up in the front. Oh yeah, it had everything. It was a real gem, really.
That's too cool. So when you initially rigged it and put it back together, what class did you rig it for?
Well, the cheapest one, which was production
Right.
stock.
And who were some of the guys you were running against there?
Oh, let's see, a lot of them. One of my favorite people was Steve Burke, and he had won Burke's Law and Wings and this and that. Great Adventure was there. Crazy Greek from Tom's River.
Yep.
Who else was around? There was a bunch of them around. Well, let's put it this way. We got into the Benihana. It would have been the 79 Benihana. And for the production class, this was after the other ones left, we had 40 boats just
Right.
in our class, all spread out.
Right.
It must have been a mile from one end to the other. And then, get the running start. So that was mayhem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was so much fun.
That's too cool.
Down
man.
to
That's-
Barnegat Light, and we knew the area of how the land goes, and you don't want to set your sights on. You want to go for something that nobody can see, but that's where we went, and
Right.
that's how we. You try to be smart too. So.
Right. Well, I just think it's cool because when I watch the old videos, that's what I like. That class was mayhem.
It was
great.
insane.
It was mayhem, and it was awesome because you had guys like you guys in there where you were the real deal. Like you were involved start to finish in that project.
Right.
And
We built everything. He and I built everything, and another fellow who's not here today, but we built everything.
Right. And to me, that's particularly cool. Like it's cool to do what you do, period. Like to go out and race boats, and it is all cool. But it's particularly cool when you built it yourself.
And we rigged the boat in 1 week in my driveway,
Really?
round the clock,
Day and night.
You had a race coming up.
with no chemical help. Just the willpower to do it. Just the willpower to do it. And we did it. And we made the race Saturday morning, right?
Yeah.
At Tom's River. I came up the night before to sign in. Had no sleep at all. And then we raced it. And we were surprised we didn't win all that hard work. But then we had to work on it. We did win one once.
So that was the first race for that boat was in Tom's River?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would have been the Barnegat Bay?
Barnegat Bay, yeah.
So when back then, what was the Barnegat Bay run? Did you run the inside to the outside run? Is that what you did?
No,
We
this
stayed-
is all inside.
All
Okay,
inside,
it was
yeah.
all inside.
Yeah.
Because I know for a couple of years back then they ran one out the inlet and down and
No.
back in the
No.
bottom.
No,
Yeah, we
no
didn't do
way.
that.
You can't do that.
They came out of Barnegat and back in Egg and up the backside of the old Long Beach Island Channel. Not the one they all run up now, that slow wake, the slow no wake up the shoreline, but the other one that was out three-quarters of the way
How long
across.
ago was that?
This was probably 82, 83.
I was around. I don't recall that at all.
Yeah, I got
I
pictures
went
of
out
it.
once. I was out once with my friend who was the executive officer at the Barnegat Lake Coast Guard, Mike Williams, and he was an excellent boat handler. And we went out on, and we were at a turn. We weren't the turn boat, but we were stationed there.
Right.
And one of the hot rods coming down, and they're going to make the left-hand turn to turn around and go back up north again. And they rolled the boat right in front of us. I'm like, oh my God. And nobody was hurt that I could, their feelings were probably hurt.
Right.
So we got them on the Coast Guard boat. And Mike, he said, okay, do this. The boat's upside down. He put a line on the front, and then he had one of his guys or somebody went down and he put a line on the back, and he gave it the gas, and the boat, it flipped right side up.
Yep.
Holy smokes, that was magic.
Yep.
And then it bailed out.
Yeah, it's too. Yeah, we see that a lot today. You know, having to ride a lot of these boats on the smaller courses, and the hardest ones to do are those catamarans
I could imagine.
because they tail drop. You know, so you almost have to, like, the owners don't ever want to hear it, but you almost have to wait for it to sink a little bit. That way you can get it turned, and once you get the sponsons pointing the right way, you can
Then you
pull
can
it
get
up and over. But yeah, I watched them flip the V bottoms over all the time. They basically just pull them from each end and they roll right around
they
like a
did.
rotisserie.
Yep, that's what
It's
it was.
wild.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
Too cool. But so you ran Indigo there for how long did you run Indigo?
What did we do? Our first was 70. We started in 78. We made improvements as we went along, and then maybe 80, 81, maybe 82 was the last time
Yeah.
was when we got rid of it. Yeah.
And then so you went from Indigo to, did you go right to Longshot?
No. I was fixing. I told you I was. Ellswick brought his boat by. It became Evil Ways, and it was a Magnum 28. And then he had me go to California that year to go fix a hole in the side of the boat. It was in San Francisco. The hole was so big, I climbed into the boat through the hole. I didn't have to climb up inside and go down through the
Right.
bolster, right inside. That was out in California. Then the next thing I get a call is, I'm building a new boat. I want you to come down and paint it for me, down to Fort Lauderdale or Hollywood area. And I went down with my lettering guy and he. We worked there a couple of days, and then he said, "Can you stay and help the guy who's really rigging it for him, who was way over his head, too much to do, rigging an offshore one boat, right?
Right.
And they had a race coming up in 2 weeks in California.
Right.
And then I said, we need help. I called Steve. What happened there?
That was a Friday night. And he says, the phone rings. He says, what are you doing? I said, what do I ever do Friday nights? I'm writing reports so I can send them in.
Right.
And he said, well, we need you down here. I said, where's down here? He says, Fort Lauderdale. Okay, I'll come down tomorrow. No, you don't understand. You got to come down tonight. And go up to the airport, go up to Eastern. They'll have a ticket for you. Get on the plane, come down here. We'll pick you up. 11:30 at night. There they are, the crew. And we worked that weekend.
We worked straight through.
And that was with Bill?
For Bill Esby, we
Yeah.
stayed at his house, and he fed us and everything. But we really weren't home. We were down there working on the boat. He could only give us 4 days. He had to go back to work.
Right.
And I stayed through. I think the one stretch was 100 hours straight without any sleep, and without any extra help. I would lay down underneath the boat in the middle of the night, and catch 40 winks, and away we go again.
Right. Right.
So, then we get it almost done, and the race is going to be the next weekend, and we're not ready. So we had to gather up. I had to gather up all these other parts like the halon system and the compasses and all little doodads that you have to bolt on to make it legal and get the life raft to take. You have to, So we loaded that. Meanwhile, Bill's wife called up trying to get Flying Tiger Airlines to haul it out. It was going to be $20,000 to put the boat in an airplane and fly it to L.A. This is serious stuff. His first open race. And then they wound up having a guy. It took 4 days to drive it, take it across. Meanwhile, I'm buying all this stuff, packing it up. And then we took it on we flew out on a Friday, and then worked real hard and put all the stuff in, and then the next morning, I guess Saturday, it raced.
Wow.
Raced the boat. We had a helicopter and went up and watched. That's what some of those pictures are from the helicopter.
Right, right. And
So
now
that was an adventure for me.
and that was Evil Ways,
No,
the Magnum.
Night
Or-
Moves.
okay, that's
This is Night Moves. That was
right.
That was a 36-foot performer, but which was originally the 40-foot cigarette mold that Aronow and Magoon did the record in Miami to New York. That hull,
Right.
and they had bought it from Aronow. So that's the Night Moves. Well, it didn't work right. So it wasn't handling properly. There's a reason why.
Now but they blocked it, right? They took the 40 down to a 36.
Yeah, they put a piece of plywood in there, and that was it. Yeah.
Right.
They did that, and something was wrong. What it was the wrong angle when they blocked it. And there was no spacer blocks or anything to adjust that.
Right.
So he adjusted it by, he called Carl Kiekhaefer, and Kiekhaefer had a new 39 cigarette from Aronow. So he got that, and he didn't like it or whatever it was. He sold it to Ellswick. Ellswick took it out, and he busted up the bottom, all the inside. And he said, the cigarette, what are you going to do about it? He said, nothing. It's all you. All those parts are yours. That's your warranty. So he called me up. Down I go again to Florida and worked away. So that became an ordeal or an ongoing thing back and forth from Jersey to Florida to fix stuff. And then it was up here and picturing here in my driveway up in Harvey Cedars. Like a lot of the guys would bring their boats up for final repair before the Benihana race.
Right, right.
So, and then the next year he said, okay, it was in 80. I went down, he says, okay, come on down. My friend just bought cigarette. Hal Halter, he's a steel boat builder out in New Orleans. And so we went in and he rented, or he's allowed to use the molds. So there's the pictures in the album there. And I took my friend.
Now, was this long shot?
We had a long shot number one. Oh, it was so bad. One weekend we went down, Steve and I went down in Florida in the middle of the year, and we had the guys that worked on the boat say, get all the stuff off the transom, clean the transom. And he and I went down, we got a piece of 1/4-inch plate aluminum and marked everything all out, and we mounted a whole aluminum transom on the back of the boat. Then you put your stuff on, and was that when we put the big aluminum bar down to the stringers? The boat was like
All
rubber.
flexing.
It was flexing.
It was moving all over the
And
place.
one inside in front of the driver's compartment to the forward center stringer.
But now you guys went down and built this one.
The next one in the end of 80, whatever it was, then he had me come down and make a new cigarette.
Right.
And that was number 17. I made that, and I thought I was going to learn a lot going to this cigarette. It's a big deal to me, man. Go in there, and I was just going to watch.
And now this was at Don's? Was Cigarette still Don's at this time?
No, he had just started Squadron
12.
across the street.
Right.
And I'll get to that in a minute. But so I went down there. My one of my employees, a friend of mine, who should be here now, but we were watching because I brought my own resin, all the wood that goes inside. I wanted our stuff. We used their Kevlar, their fiberglass, and we thought their guys were going to do it. And I was watching it, and I said to Billy, I said, I don't like the way they're doing it. I thought they were the best. I mean, they were all nice guys. The Cuban guy,
the schedule, you mean, right?
Everything I didn't like.
Right.
I'm from Jersey. I don't like everything, right?
Right.
So
Well, you're not necessarily wrong.
no, I'm not.
And just not to slow you down or cut you off, but we do have a lot of time. We can slow down. But the thing you always heard, and it's funny because now I wasn't there, right? I mean, I'm
Well, we're trying
much
to make
later.
you there.
So you hear either of people that got a brand new cigarette and they still run it to this day.
Sure.
Or you heard people that got a brand new cigarette and it broke in half 10 minutes later. Like you never hear there's nothing in the middle. Like it almost seemed like you're 100% right. What it was the scheduling. It was if they built that boat real fast or if it took a week to build,
It was in the time when the Kevlar was just sort of coming in. I had already Kevlared the Indigo a couple of years prior. I had to
Right.
buy it right from DuPont. You didn't go to the Kevlar store down in the strip mall. You had to go buy it from the factory. That's
Right.
what I did. and it wasn't cheap. But I said, I'm going to do it. But that's how I work, right? That's how I roll.
Along with the $100 scissors to cut
Yes.
it.
Oh, yeah. And I had
Oh,
to buy
yeah.
the right scissors, otherwise you couldn't cut it.
Right.
So you knew it was tough. So what did we do? We did put in, I don't know, it was Billy's idea, whatever, but we put a notch in the back of the transom. So give it a little bit less wetted area back there, okay? It went from the main strakes, the two strakes, side to side down. So it was probably that much less from 39 minus that much. So it was a little bit
Right.
less. Okay. We did that. So we put that in the mold, blocked it, then they gel coated, etc. And then they started laying it up, and I go, no, I don't like it. So Billy said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I'll do it. And I have to get my guys from up in Jersey. So I did. I called my crew down, my other guys that work for me and stuff like that. So they're all my friends. We're all friends up there, you
Right.
know.
Right.
And so we worked on it. We laid the whole thing up. We had plywood brought in from Baltimore, from the place that made it for the PT boats in World War II. Akumi plywood, like the best you can get.
Right.
And we put five full-length stringers in it. That's not really unheard of anymore, or wasn't then. And 13 bulkheads. Again, the pictures are in there. I have the pictures. And a whole bunch of scantlings in the bottom, all Kevlar, carbon. Carbon was new then. Everything was new. It was done with the best resin at the time,
Right.
vinyl ester resin. So we built the boat, got it to a point, got it on the trailer. Pictures are in the boat there, in the book, lifting it out of the mold. Billy's right there. And then I said, I got to go home. Oh, while we're finishing up building it, because it's real hot in Miami in August, in case
Yep.
on the water and no air conditioning, you know.
Right.
And so Don Arano would come over every once in a while. He'd come over from across the street and he'd watch us. You know, a big, tall guy, good-looking guy, well-dressed. And he'd talk to me and we'd talk. And he says, oh, yeah, I like what you're doing, because we're doing it not the way everybody else is doing it.
Right.
So after he came over a couple of days and he said, when you get a second, come on up. When you take a break, come on over across the street. I want to show you something. So I did, you know. And here's this brand new building, and they were called Squadron 12s. They were the same as the cigarette as far as I could see.
Right.
And he took me upstairs in brand new offices, all pretty girls working there. And I'm like, and he offered me a job. He wanted me to produce his boats, work there and do it. And I'm like, oh, I got a wife and kid, a baby back home, and I can get in a lot of trouble down here. No, thanks anyway.
Right.
I'll go back home. I'll go back to Harvey Cedars, where it's
Right.
going to get cold. in
Where
a
it's
few
nice and
months.
quiet.
Yeah. And that's what that. But that was quite a thrill to have that happen.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, it's an incredible thing, and
Yep.
especially to build it there, but with your hands.
Yeah.
That's too
Oh,
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want
know.
to share?
That's why the hands are so pretty.
you want to share the weight of that hull when you pulled it out of the mold? Because that was key. A lot of the stuff that Cigarette did, they were resin rich. And you see resin in pockets and corners
Pools.
and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
I know what the weight is, but I'll let him share that with you, because it was dramatically lighter, and that was one of the keys to make that boat go fast.
Wasn't it? It was
Right.
2250, right? 2,250 pounds.
And now go over the specs of that, just so everybody listening understands.
39-foot V-bottom cigarette, and the hull, with most of the wood and everything in it, was 2,250 pounds.
That's
the
incredible.
deck, I redesigned the deck. Instead of having it look like a little cabin cruiser deck type thing, I brought it back so you have more smooth air coming back. I rigged it up with a hatch in front of the cockpit. Because a year or so earlier, Ellswick was racing down in Argentina with this blackjack boater. It was John Player Special, and
Oh, hang on, I'll fix it.
you got to pay the bill.
That's it, man. Got to pay the man. We got blinking lights again.
So I keep going.
Yeah, no
Okay.
problem. I'll
So
get it
he's
fixed.
racing down in Argentina with this boat. I was supposed to go on the trip. We were going to paint it on the ship on the way down.
If you
It's like a
want to
disco.
hang 1 second, we'll fix it.
Saturday Night Fever.
That's what it seems like, doesn't it? Okay, it's this one. These I didn't know when I bought these lights that they were they're actually like connected to the Wi-Fi in the building,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't know any of that. And If I'd known, I wouldn't have done it. But I didn't, and now I have them.
And now we're enjoying them.
They let us know
There
they're
you
there.
go. You get what you pay for, right?
Billy's saying hello.
Yeah.
Why don't you use that gun? That'll put it out.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking in a minute.
You want to just unplug that one?
I'm getting there. I'm just figuring out which one it is, that's all. Okay.
It's very hypnotic. Do you want my money?
You don't have a used car lot here, do you?
Hey.
Okay. I got it. I'm closing in on it. I got it surrounded.
There you go.
Confirm. It should stop blinking. As it hypnotizes me.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
And we fixed it.
Next up is a pair of dikes.
Can't
That's
see anything now, but
So
All right. Sorry about that.
So he's racing in Argentina, and a drive breaks off,
Right.
and the boat starts sinking. And Billy and his crew and his other guys, they get out of the boat. It's going down fast because
Yeah.
the whole drive is off the back. And and Billy made one of his guys go up inside the front of the boat to get the safety equipment out. And they just got it out. The raft and they had life jackets on. The raft and emergency stuff.
Is this when he gets picked up and ends up in a different country?
Yeah, the boat sinks.
Right.
It's gone. There's no buoys on it. Nothing. Nobody know. There's no such thing as GPS.
Right.
It's gone. And there's three big giant guys in this little tiny airplane life raft floating out there like rub-a-dub-dub, you know. Well, finally, this is off Argentina, a Chilean merchant ship or freighter comes by, and they signal, and they get rescued on it. But they couldn't let any. Billy's wife is on the shore and everybody else. Where the hell are they? I think it was 4 days later when they were able to get the freighter in a place so they could signal or radio in. They weren't allowed to radio because Chile and Argentina are at war.
Right.
So they got
Which
a boat.
is also why there was no help boats or anything, right? There was
Right.
nothing around. Yeah.
So this is ocean racing. So they managed to put them on a boat and bring them back in. So 4 days. So I said, okay. So back to the long shot number 2. I put a hatch there, and in the hatch you could pop the hatch out. It was cord, but if you're sinking, who cares about it? And then with like a trampoline or a net hanging there was all the safety equipment. So you climb up in the front deck because that's the last part to go down,
Right.
and get your stuff and get in your raft and get out.
Right.
So that was my little addition to change. That
Right.
the front deck, the notch wasn't my idea, but we did that. And then the guys after that, they wanted me to do the same to their cigarettes, but I said no, I'm done working in
Yeah.
Florida.
You can do it yourself.
Yeah, it's easy.
I'll tell you, it's funny. When I had Johnny Stanch in,
Yeah.
and he was telling me a story prior to, it wasn't on the podcast, and he was talking to me about, he sunk one of the boats he was in, I
Oh,
forget.
boy.
And he's sitting up on the bow, and, remember the old Scarabs had the headlights?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
he's sitting up on the bow, and the boat's just bobbing, and all of a sudden that headlight went pow and blew out of the front of the
Oh,
boat,
wow.
and it went down.
Then it went down,
and
let the air
he
out.
couldn't get away from it. And that was the first I'd ever heard of that, because I guess when the boat goes down, the water
suction.
There's a
fills.
suction there.
It
yeah.
fills the gap, and it pulls you right down with it. And he said he went down pretty far before
'Cause
he
that
could
was-
kick away from
he
it.
was holding on
well,
to it.
typical Johnny was probably getting one more Marlboro Red in before he got in the raft. You know
Yeah.
Johnny.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. I think another boat I worked on was Ryan's Express, a local boat. Do you know that name?
I don't.
It was from over on Manilow. Was it
Manilow, yeah.
Ted Riley, or what was his name?
I forget. But that's, Ted was his
Ted
first name.
Maley.
Maley.
Maley. So we painted that, fixed it, and then the next thing I see in the paper from out here is the point of the boat sticking out of the water, but they had a rope on it. They had a line on it.
Right. Yeah, it's wild.
So
And
you got to have your stuff. You got to be ready for anything.
right.
That's how we built the boat, ready for anything.
I can remember my old man telling me stories. He was sitting out off the jetty in Point Pleasant, and they're, you know, somebody's race boat goes out and wrecks and blows the deck off, and there's ping pong balls floating around, and people used all kinds of stuff to try to get them to stay afloat.
Sure, sure.
Pretty funny. Nowadays, we don't, you know, we race in such a tiny little race course. We got a hook on it before it gets too much water in it, you know?
Yeah. You're like the early model airplanes on a string. You just go around in a circle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. You know, it's funny because I've been doing a lot of these shows, and you know, the common consensus is that the racing back then was checkpoint racing. You know, it wasn't the what we do today in the essence of like finesse driving, right? But it was more of the navigation side of things and all that. And it's funny, you either get guys that want to talk about how much better it was then, or guys that want to talk about how much better it is now. And I can honestly say, from sitting in the middle of somebody who really doesn't care to have that conversation, I think it was both equally as cool. Like, and if anything, I almost lean towards what you did back then for cool factor, because how much cooler could that have been than winning the Benihana or winning and finally making it back while 20 of your buddies are trying to find their way back.
You've heard of the Magellan Award?
Yeah.
Follow the guy in front because he knows where he's going. Well, when you start to
Except
see
when
the
he
Twin
doesn't.
Towers in New York, you know you went too far.
Too far.
You missed the turn. We had an incident off of Long Island, South Shore, you know, of Long Island, whatever
Yep.
it was. And we're doing fine. It was a good day, everything. And all of a sudden, something stopped, broke. Transmission. Usually that was our problem with a production boat. So Steve's doing his best to get the thing up on plane. So he said, you guys, I mean, the navigator was Tom and myself. We climbed up in front of the boat to try and get the weight up there. And he's working and working and working it. And he's going along, and it's almost on plane. And then he goes, wow, he screams out. I go, oh, my God, we're going to die. And we're running to the back. I almost killed my friend to get out first. And what was he? Remember what you were screaming at?
Sunfish.
The big sunfish.
Oh, goodness.
With a big,
Huge.
With a big fin on. It looked like the biggest shark you ever saw in your life.
And boy, those guys were pissed.
Yeah. I said,
They
we're
were
not.
just because they had to climb through. They got their jackets on and everything else. Yeah, I don't think he would talk to me for a week. He was like,
I'll sit on the front of the boat, but not inside of it.
Yeah, when you can't see where you're
No.
going.
Well, you're trapped.
Right.
I don't want to drown out there.
Yeah.
So there's little things like that. They're all good stuff.
Little things.
"That's small stuff."
We had
So-
lots of fun.
Something that I've been meaning to ask and I haven't in the last few podcasts. People are messaging me. We say navigation was key, right?
Yeah.
You know, not missing your points, knowing where you were at.
Yeah.
But what I never do is ask you to explain the navigation. So, like, I'll say it was Lowrance, it was charting, it was using this, it was using that. But people don't necessarily understand what that was. How did that work?
Okay. It was actually very simple. There was no Loran around. It was just coming out, and you were not allowed to have it.
Okay. Why? Because
No,
it was expensive?
It was
or
outside help.
Okay.
Loran stations are outside help to tell you where you are.
Right.
No GPS. Not like today. You look at your watch and it tells you where you are. No.
Right.
So they would give us in the program, or they gave us a separate sheet, the layout of the course. And they were interested, you know, back in this and that, and where the checkpoint. But description wasn't a location, just like near Stony Point, something like that. So you had to get to these places, and you had to go around the boat, the correct side of the boat. You could be 10 feet away on the wrong side, and they don't count you.
Right.
That happened before, right?
Yeah.
Remember Detroit?
Yep.
Anyway, so what we would do, learned this with Ellswick, and so we chartered a plane, and a day or two before, we're out and we got in a plane. We have the thing, and we're running it. So we get down low as you can, allowed to be, and we're running the course approximately where it's going to be like 10 miles at 180 degrees and so many miles at this and that. It's just so you get the feel down there of smokestacks, amusement parks, anything like that. In other words, you want to be there. It's easier to run a course if you've been there before.
Right.
So we did it in the plane, and that helped. That
Right.
helped a lot. Yep. So here's how you navigated. You had that thing, and we would tape it to the dash. We had to have compasses, and we had two of the big Danforth. That was the best compass at the time. No electronic, right? Just
No, just a
there's
compass.
just compasses. You looked at them, and then the navigator, he would put a list, usually with tape, and he would put things on the dash. If you're doing multiple laps, you tear when you're done a lap, you take the tape off because after a while you don't know how many laps you've done.
Oh yeah, right.
So that one, he had all the directions of where to go, and he would, even though we're going, he's got going this way, pointing with it. You couldn't really talk because it was real loud. We didn't have all the fancy electronics. We're in the open, so
Right.
we didn't have bubbles on it. We weren't bubble boys. We just ran in the boats.
Right.
And if it was serious, you could scream, but otherwise no. And then we had the when we did the Miami to Bimini and then to Fort Lauderdale and back, we had an inside line. Ellswick told us, or his guys told us, listen, when the wind is blowing northwest at a certain time, which it was that day, and it's blowing strong, you aim, because the Gulf Stream's
Gulf.
coming up,
Right.
you aim, you want to go to Bimini, it's at 90 degrees. Run 85 degrees.
Right.
So
Pick
we
up
had a
10
pro-
in the Gulf Stream.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we had water in the engine coming out of where you start. It's like Miami Vice going by all the cruise ships.
Right. Right.
It was really cool. So we got water in the engine. And he couldn't get it started. He gets it started. We're the last one out. We're like a minute behind. So they're all long gone and they're headed their way. So we're going along, and then Longshot comes up alongside of us. They're waving. They're our buddies and they're pointing. So we did the right, and we went right on just as we're coming up to the between. Gun Key, Cat Key. There's a cut there.
Yeah, Cat Key.
As just as we're coming up, I looked to my left up. Here comes all the other guys coming down.
Right.
They were 5 miles. They hit it 5 miles north. They had to come down to go through the cut.
Right.
Magellan Award.
So that's where
Yeah.
it pays to either do your homework or, there's no cheating.
Right.
It's just doing your homework,
Right. Well, there was some cheating. Yeah, I laugh. I was talking to everybody I've been talking to lately. We got Bill Gazelle's Great Adventure sitting out there, so I've been talking a lot about Bill. And they're like, man, that guy used to get out in front and lead us to some other state, drop the hatches and go the other way, And I'm like, man, I'd be so pissed.
Well, I have no comments.
Right. I'm not asking you to. I just
Okay.
think it's funny. The games are so different. Like today, you don't have games like that. Today you have chicken fights. Who can fake who out, who can get in under whose skin, who can get in whose head. It's a little different.
But you can't rub gunnels or anything like that. You can't. You got to leave some room.
We do.
Well, you're not supposed to.
We're not supposed to, but we do. It's it's actually gotten way too commonplace anymore. And getting together, getting the boats together.
I've seen some pictures like that. That's pretty damn dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous. And like probably most famous for it is your buddy Johnny Stanch in that run with the fountains. And but it's guys aren't how do I put this? The boats today aren't built like the boats you guys were in. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah.
I do believe in the talent of the drivers that are on the courses today. They spend so much time in tight situations like that they are that talented that they can do stuff like that. But you're dealing with foam core boats that are what you call bubble boats. My Phantom out there,
the bubble, or the top,
the canopy.
Yep.
The my Phantom out there. If you were to cut that apart, there's not much to it.
I know.
And that's my problem with it. My problem isn't that the guys can't do it. They do it. I mean, they do it well. I've seen them. They, when they're jockeying for position into a turn, they'll rub each other. They'll let each other know they're there. And but they're good about it. Not hard impacts, not like T-bone shots or anything crazy like that. But part of me feels the boats today, if you get in a real bad situation, there's not much protecting you.
You should DQ anybody who rubs somebody else. DQ'd out right there.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Well, and the hard part is you have to prove intent. And, like, sometimes it just happens. Like, in the canopy boats, you don't see each other. Like, if you're running, if I'm on your hip coming through a turn, there's a good chance your driver doesn't see me. So, like, if you're driving from the right-hand side of the boat and you have a rearview mirror that you're looking out of that's 4 inches around, right? Now you put it in a turn and the boat rolls up in the turn. You don't know I'm there.
Yeah.
And now all it takes is one hop
Yeah.
and skip, and we
Of
get
course.
together.
You got wakes from other boats.
But you're 100% right, because that's just one accidental example, but there's a million where I can go. We definitely did that on purpose,
We've had some close ones, or like Steve Burke in Tom's River. He was real mad at us. We're at the one turn going to go back up the river, and he goes, "You guys, you guys cut me
Cut
off.
me
or
off.
You took my lane. I said, oh, I thought you broke down, Steve. That's why we went there. Ah.
He wasn't happy about
No,
that.
he wasn't happy.
And we'd play jokes on some of the other guys too.
Yeah.
Back in the day, they would they get lost, or you knew they were lost. So we'd
Right.
buy these little compasses with the little suction cups on them.
Yeah.
And if they leave their helmets on the boat, yeah, we'd put them right there, right in front of them, so they could see that. It was fun. It was fun stuff, and
It
taken
was.
lightly. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
neat.
It was a lot of fun.
You know what's so cool is all the moving parts to it. You know, like today, there's we show up and we get to a race course and it's stadium style. It's it's like NASCAR anymore.
Short track.
Right. But what's so cool about your guys' era is the moving parts of everything, of currents, of winds, of
Very
which
important.
direction the sea was cornering in, and it is just so cool because there's so many different avenues to win a race. Whereas today, it comes down to who picked the right propeller that day, who's
Well, that's
who's got
important.
absolutely, but it didn't necessarily make or break your day.
Well, we had the benefit from being from Barnegat Lake. That's a big commercial fishing town, just like Point is. And so the fishing guys, they said, well, if you're coming down, you better do this and that and run stuff. And then here's an example of not paying attention. And we, as Rocky Aoki, was it Rocky? Yeah.
Yeah, Rocky.
And he's racing his Benihana boat, and we're supposed to take the outside buoy at Barnegat Inlet. Well, he took the buoy right up at the end of the jetty. He flew. What lucky for him, a wave came up, so he just flew over the top of the rock jetty. Didn't even know
man.
it was there.
Right.
And then we towed in Betty Cook's boat, not in our Indigo, but we were spectating at the time. Yeah.
Right. Right.
But good stuff.
What made the Benihana the Benihana? That's it's funny. Even myself, I don't know. Like I spent my whole life right here,
I know.
2 miles away from Benihana, where where it all went down in Point Pleasant, and I don't know what made it such a success.
I'm sure Billy Martin knows exactly the accurate thing of it. But I recall when Rocky, it was the Hennessy. And then Hennessy dropped out because it was too expensive, whatever. It was a big deal, put that race on,
Oh yeah,
as you would know.
and it was on a Wednesday, right?
Yes.
It's
Wednesday,
so hard to fathom.
like
Right in the middle of the
July.
week.
It was actually good without all the weekend
Right.
traffic.
Right.
But Rocky was racing, and I guess he stepped up. They said, oh, it's not going to be next year. No Hennessy next year. I'll do it. And he was racing. He got hurt in San Francisco in a Kevlar, was it a V-bottom? Where the thing
Oh yeah, it came back. It was a V
what's
bottom.
his name?
He was disemboweled in that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut in half right here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not killed, but
No,
that
but
was
talk
the end
about
of
a
that.
warrior.
Yeah, that's the end of it. Yeah. Yep, that was the end of his racing.
Great race just before the race in the pits. They brought in all the chefs.
Yeah.
They were cooking up everything. It was just,
Oh yeah.
isn't racing great?
That's
I
too
mean,
cool.
come on, this is way too cool. And but that's you mentioned that with some of the boats and going off course. But what I think made that event so good? You get the big name guys.
Yeah.
They all came in. Everybody wanted to see the big boats. You could walk through the pits and you see all this hardware that's there. Metro New York, Long Island had a lot of racers, a lot of P guys, and as did New Jersey.
Right.
So it brought in a lot of folks, and it was kind of exciting because you had all these boats in one spot. And
But you know what was wild, and I think you're 100% right. But you would see the crowds, like from the pictures of, we look back, and the crowds were much further than
Yeah.
there was a lot of guys in the area with
Right.
a lot of friends. There was big crowds. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
huge attraction. And you know what's so cool is you just said the big guys would show up, right?
Oh, yeah.
And when you say the big guys, sure, you had some stars in the mix, but the big guys were household names.
sure.
And that to me is something that we lost today. We still have our household names, except what we don't realize is it only exists in our own head. It's not real. And like back then, you guys had real household names. I mean, guys that were movie stars in their own right from boat racing. And that
Well,
is,
Don Johnson was the first.
well, and you had some that they made their way outside. But the guys like when you say, like I can say Rocky Aoki's name today and people know who he is.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's wild because like that won't happen anymore. That won't like nobody will say my name in 20 years and they'll know who I am. That's just not going to happen.
I will. When I
Thank
turn
you.
100,
I appreciate that.
I'll give
If that's what you
Yep,
remember when you're
that's
100, I'll
right.
be proud.
When I'm sitting there drooling, I will. Yeah, the guys were they were businessmen. The more money you had, the bigger the boat you could afford to build.
Right.
The stock boat was the cheapest. We had the rule book, and everybody, your local gas station could help you build motors if they're all motorheads.
Right.
And do that. But when you get into the exotic things, the big Speedmaster, lower units and all that stuff, and we just tried to stay with the stuff that we could afford. It was expensive. It
Yeah.
was expensive.
Yeah.
Then we had to go to the sport class. That was an interesting. You know what class that is?
Was that sportsman or sports?
It's called sport.
Because there's over the years there's so
changed.
it's hard to keep track.
Sportsman, usually you think of as a guy who got a fishing boat and he's put a number on it. No, it was.
They called it sport. It wasn't sportsman's class.
Okay,
No.
you know what it is, because when you look back from like my direction, it's not just one organization that you have to get
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with. There's
Right.
so many and so many different classes, you lose track.
Well, we had
So what was-
Najopra. Najopra was, and you guys are part of that. New Jersey Offshore, but whatever it was.
Yep, they're actually still involved.
Are they?
Yep.
Good. Oh, that's
they
good.
they still run the Point Pleasant race, New Jersey Offshore.
Good,
Yep.
good. So, yeah, we just wanted. What was I going to say? It just depended how much money you wanted to put into stuff.
Right.
Another thing I just thought about you're talking about how do you navigate? Okay, I tried to give you that, the maps, and this and that, and the directions. But I had, since I knew how far, they said on the chart this is going to be a 10-mile run from point A to B, 8 to C, etc. Well, out in the middle of the water, it's hard to. There's no mile markers.
Right.
So from I raced enduro on motorcycles. So that's a system where you have to keep track of time and distance
Right.
and your direction. Well, the direction was the map, so time, and we had watches up there, and I showed Ellswick that they had the big Tag Heuer watches on and you would time everything, and you knew the distance, so you could figure out how fast am I going. Don't go by those odometers. You get speedometers there. No, you have to figure it all out with time and distance.
Right.
And it worked. It helped.
It's wild. It's just like it's amazing to think about the mathematics of all that and how easy it would have been to wind up over here or over there or.
Oh,
you know.
yeah, you could be way off. As
Yeah.
I explained before,
Yeah.
going to
In
Bimini.
just a small, minute mistake, you could wind
Yeah.
up so
Yeah.
far away by the time you're there. It's
Didn't
crazy.
take much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing that anybody ever found their way all the way around. You know?
Just think of the effort it takes to send a rocket to the moon and not miss it,
Right.
because you're off by a little bit here, it's going to be hundreds, thousands of
Yeah.
miles off by the time it
Yeah,
gets
it's
there.
it's incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's neat, really.
So now in 1981, you said you're in Longshot.
Built it in the end of 80. It was for 81, 81.
So where'd you go with Longshot from there?
Oh, where did we go with Longshot? Well, they finished out the season in 1980 with the rubber Longshot, the one that we kept together.
Right.
Then we
The rubber
we need the
Longshot.
new.
I
Well,
love
hey,
that.
it did its job
Right.
between Harold Grady's engines and us keeping that boat together.
Right.
It worked. They won the overall. The top dog in APBA, and then we built the new one. And over that winter, and I told you just down there, Aaron, and so the winter of beginning of 81 or 2.
81, I think.
81. That's right, 81 it would be. And then the first race, I think it was in New Orleans. And we were out there going to watch the race and all that. And in fact, we had dinner at Copeland's house. He was Popeyes
Right.
on the water on Lake Pontchartrain. It was really cool. You
Right.
know. Local TV stars, Nash Roberts with the weather.
Right.
That's an inside joke. Anyway, so he took off, and Lake Pontchartrain is exceptionally shallow.
Yep.
And he's leading with this brand new boat. It's hauling butt. And there was like a swell, and he hit the bottom and busted a drive. It didn't hurt the boat, but it broke the drive. It didn't break it off, but it rendered it useless. So
Right.
that was the end of that race. And then he had to do other stuff. So that was the end of that boat. We had it in storage. It's been around. Right now it's in Chicago.
Right.
Some guy up there has it and
That's crazy.
scratching his head. What the hell do I do with this thing now?
I just saw some guys down in Florida. Ryan Beckley was out in one of the old Popeyes over 2 weeks ago or something. He had
Yeah.
one of them out. I believe it was the. I don't even want to take a guess because I'll be wrong because there's so many of them. But
Yeah.
they were out.
Yeah.
They've got one back complete and running again. It's pretty cool.
Well, that leads me to another thought between you and our friend Christian is vintage only racing. Find the APBA rule book from whatever year that was we had, remember?
1803, I think.
1803. You could only have 2 masts. You know, that was all you're allowed to have. And 12 cannons, that's all you were allowed to have. Yeah.
I'd love to put that in a rule book.
So, yeah. Another thing, what was I going to say?
Well, and not to
ahead.
jump over vintage
No.
racing. So Rich Lors is heavily involved in some vintage stuff with APBA.
You know him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on
Yeah,
Facebook.
might have heard from him. Might have heard of Rich Lors.
I
He's a
have
small,
heard of him, yeah.
small time guy, but he's putting together. He's got the vintage thing rocking and rolling.
Good.
I don't know that they're doing a lot of like competitive events. I think they more or less just drag them out and blow the mothballs out of them and go have a yeehaw. You know.
Yeah.
But it would be really cool to see not just the vintage. See vintage as in like old school boats. I'd love to see vintage as in the old classes, the old rules, the old, you know, and whether we go run 180 miles or not,
No,
that's totally separate. But, you know,
50
go
miles
run.
is enough.
Yeah, the same race courses that we run on
Sure.
today, but just go have a yeehaw with,
Yeah.
with what's still around. Because there is a lot of it around. People don't realize, but there's stuff everywhere.
The boats. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
there should-
Yeah.
Yeah.
But why go to a regular boat race today and you're totally outshadowed by these large super boats? We call them super. I don't know what you call them now.
Well, you think so, right? Like, you think so, but a lot of people dig the old stuff. Like, believe it or not, I get more questions about some of our old race boats, from the Viper to my green boat was a Carrera.
Okay.
And I get more questions about that than the Fountain or any of the new stuff. That's commonplace anymore. You can go to a poker run and see 150 of those boats at any given day. You know, they're everywhere. You'll never see an Indigo. You'll never see Longshot. You won't see that today.
Or some of the fastest boats in our classes were from the Great Lakes, Detroit area, like Little Rhino.
Right.
Remember that one?
Fast.
Seminole Spirit. Steve Baum made his own boat, Maverick.
Maverick.
Right.
Fast. Just really awesome boats.
There's some crazy people up there in the Great Lakes.
Oh, yeah.
That's my favorite trek is when we do the St. Clair run and we do all the, you know, Michigan swing up there.
Do you
I
race
love
there?
it.
Is
oh,
it
yeah.
racing? Okay.
Yeah, we race in
You
like,
go in, what's that lake called? Lake St. Clair.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we race in Lake St.
And then
Clair.
you come back down under the bridges that go to the island. and
We
into
stay right
Detroit.
between them. There's two bridges to Canada right there. The one in I think it's
There's an island in the middle,
yes,
that belongs
that's
to
further
US.
up. Yeah.
and racing under there. And we're coming down. We're having a duel. Was that Michelob Light or no? It was the kid from Massachusetts. Remember him? He had a small boat like ours. Anyway, we're going side by side, coming down. We know we're on fumes, and Steve and I said, "Everybody duck down." Steve says, "You got the throttles." Everybody's ducked down. I'm ducking. I have the throttles. It's pin. You go under those bridges, roar underneath, and it was like a side by side. I don't know if we beat him there or not. He was a modified boat.
Right.
He was a modified, but it was fun.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff was fun.
You know what's cool about it is, like, I'm not a huge fan of the flatwater drag races. It's just not my thing. I love it. I love the venues. I love the people. They're amazing races. But my thing's the Point Pleasants, the Ocean Cities. I
Yeah,
like getting out in the bump. But St. Clair's cool to me because it's tricky. They
It
got
is.
that. They got that 7-8 mile an hour current, and then 1 or 2 laps into the race, we start turning up 2-3 footers in the south turn.
That's right.
And that's when people actually get in trouble. But believe it or not, they'll run all day in the ocean and never have a problem. But people get in trouble in Lake St. Clair.
There, and we raced at Cedar Point, Ohio, which is down below in Lake Erie.
Lake Erie.
Right.
And that was very tricky with islands all in
Yeah.
between Canada and U.S. there. And we were going across, that was one where we did the airplane to check it out. And we're going along, and all of a sudden, there's a hole in the water.
Yeah.
Like, picture like 100-foot diameter hole.
But
in the
like
water.
rapids. They get like rapids in there.
Well,
It's
no,
crazy.
it wasn't. It might have been from a tanker wake.
Yeah.
Or an ore carrier or something. Oh, we slammed the other side. I lost my teeth on that thing.
Nick Scafidi, I'll tell you.
Nick, yeah.
You know Nick?
Yeah.
He was running his super stock, which is a 32-foot Doug Wright, so very similar to like a skater and stuff, with a pair of 300 XSs on it. They should run 118, 119, all the way strung out. Well, crazy man Scafidi goes all the way up the river, spins it around, gets going with the current, and he's running 122, 123, 124, thinking he's bad, right? Well, it's a piece of foam. that boat that
Yeah.
they run in. They're 4,000 pounds. To be running 120 something mile an hour. So he's hot dogging coming down by the pits running real hard and never saw that freighter wake. Stood her up,
Oops.
put it over backwards, blew the deck off it, destroyed it. The boat was 3 weeks old.
Oh, did you get hurt?
Oh, no, everybody was fine.
That's
Everybody
good.
was
That's
fine.
what counts. You can build a new boat any day.
Well, and that's the advantage to those canopies. You know, they've come a long way. I used to believe they were a false sense of security. You know, going back 20 years, I used to see the canopy structures, and they were like, you know, just like what you would think they are. Just a piece of fiberglass folded over your head. Nothing really.
I thought it was just for aerodynamics.
No, it's a safety thing. Boats going over the top of each other, stuff like that. You know, the factory 1 and 2 days of APBA in the 90s there really shed a lot of light to that because they started stepping the hulls. You got a lot of the step bottom boats in the game, and people started sliding around turns and getting in accidents and going up and over each other. So that's when the canopies really came in. But I used to not really like them because if you put them upside down, my opinion was always I'd rather be pitched than stuck, you know?
Yeah.
And then as time's gone on, these canopy cells are extremely safe. I mean, every time there's a wreck, there's a million guys that take that home and dissect what could have been done better, where did it crack, did the windshields come out of it?
Oh yeah, you got to give it a whole.
Yeah, and they're really, really good now. You know, they're really safe now. So now Nick and his guy Scott Porter they were both safe. They got out and everything was fine. But yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like all the stuff we do in the ocean, where you'd think it's super dangerous, be out there in 8 to 10s. All the dangerous stuff happens in those lakes.
And when you're running on the south shore of Long Island, when you come down around Brooklyn, there's because everything's bulkheaded.
Yeah,
And the wakes
it's a
bounce
washing
back
machine.
it's crazy.
Yeah,
So Ellswick he was going to get in a catamaran, a wooden catamaran. That was the craze with
Yep.
the cougar
Yep.
cats. And he had a local guy, Jim Caldwell. There's Caldwell Diving. Anyway, he built a boat down near where we are. Out of all the best plywood, it was, I don't know, 37, 38, could have been 40.
What, the boat?
The boat.
I thought it was a 33.
33? What?
Yeah.
No, that was the tunnel boat. This was different. It was bigger. It was a tunnel boat also.
Oh, okay.
So, anyway, here's the maiden voyage. It's all rigged. It goes to Florida. It's all rigged. So we're going to go out, and we get in a 33 Cobra, a bunch of us guys, and we go out the inlet there at Fort Lauderdale, and Billy and Caldwell, they're going out for the maiden voyage. So they're headed north up along the beach, along Fort Lauderdale, and they cranking it, and whoop, off it goes. You know, we're in a good boat with big blocks, but nothing compared to
Right.
that. It's going along, and I said, wow, it's really moving. I go, wow, look at that splash. And all of a sudden we caught up to it. Not good. Apparently there was a coconut floating in the water,
Oh no.
and it was a thin, everything was done thin, and all
Right,
that.
right.
Broke through. The water pressure came in, and it blew Caldwell like a piece of toast out of a toaster up in the air. Ellswick managed to grab him. He had him on the deck. Of course, the boat's going down, and we went up. We put a line on it, and we're pulling the boat. And Caldwell was not conscious. He looked great, like he might have been dead. And Billy's holding on to him and all that. And as we're on the way back to the inlet, the boat decides it wants to go upside down.
Right.
So Billy grabs it and he brings him around. He gets him on the bottom of the boat, which is now up. We drag it in past the Coast Guard at Everglades there. Big marina with the big cutters with all the leaves painted on the side. And nobody even looked up at us, dragging this huge boat in upside down. You'd think the Coast Guard would want to know what's up.
Right.
What's up? No. And we managed to bring it in and then travel lift it out upside down, flip it into slings.
Right.
What a mess. So
Oh, it's crazy.
that was the end of the catamaran.
Yeah. Those Cougars came on strong there for a
It
couple of
wasn't
years.
a Cougar, it was Caldwell's design, but it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
matter.
Right.
It's
But they a lot of people went to that right around there. Betty Cook started running one. Rocky ran one.
Yep,
They really came on strong, and I think Steve Curtis and them overseas put in so much time, in the cows events and stuff like that, that those boats are pretty dialed in by the time they got to the
sure.
States.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I just think I have like a Mount Rushmore of like what I think is like iconic and offshore, and that's definitely up there as those old Cougars. They're just so neat to me. It's just an off the wall design for what we were doing at that time.
Oh, yeah, they were great.
Yeah, wild. What seceded them? I mean that Shadow came shortly after
It
that.
was a fiberglass cat, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think
They were
that
made in North Jersey, weren't they?
that
Yeah.
was Rich Lures and Linder, right?
George
Linder, yep.
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 And I think they came shortly after that, and that kind of started the the modified class or super boat at that time.
You're getting into super boats, a completely different thing.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm just
Yeah.
getting off
Well,
track.
super
But-
boats there was no limit on displacement.
Right.
We had
That was
limits.
when you were seeing 4 big blocks bolted in them.
Sure.
And yeah, that was a wild. You know, when you watch that from our perspective today, we would never even think of putting more big blocks in a boat, or to us it's just aero and hydrodynamics, and
That's go back to when we were starting, and we're learning from '78 on. And Steve had a pamphlet from Mercury Propellers. He says, "Read this." Didn't tell me what they just read it, and I looked. Okay. So after we had coming back from Ohio, and we had a little detour there where we won the Fats Domino Desert Classic, and you know what that one is?
no, I don't.
The boat and tow vehicle crashed on Interstate 80.
Oh
And
no.
it totaled the car, didn't hurt anybody bad, and the boat went up, hit a coal bank, and slid down. And it was busted up. Transom was half broken off, everything else. There's another fix after the burn. Fixed it again. This time
That poor boat.
Steve said, "Now follow this." So that's when I worked on the bottom
Right.
and realized how important making the bottom true is. And then and changed it a little bit because we learned stuff.
Right.
We changed the center of gravity. And
Right.
then years later, checked it with one of the top racers, your buddy Richie.
Yep.
He said, "Yeah, you did the right thing." That's what we learned too.
Right. Now, were you into doing the speed skiffs and stuff like that by then, or was this later?
It's in the magazine. It's in the book.
Well, I'm going to put the book in the podcast, but people
Yeah,
listening
yeah,
want to know.
Yep. What did I do? Fiberglass shop, and I was making decks for the speed skiff from a guy up in North Jersey, Bud Bender.
Right.
He was the speed skiff guy,
Right.
and he wouldn't trust me with the hull. He's afraid I was going to pop it, steal it,
Right.
copy it. I said, "No, I just want to work, and I would build him decks, and then after a while, he sold me the hull. So we started, and the business. He helped Foxy, and he's not here. Robbie especially. And we started building these. The only thing I changed was I made a fancy hood for it because I didn't like I had a little goofy scoop on it, and I didn't like that. So, from my automotive experience back in Pennsylvania making aftermarket stuff, I said, let's put a Sox and Martin Pro
You
stock.
were doing stuff for Motion.
Yeah, Motion Performance
Motion.
in Long Island. Yeah,
So
I know
funny
that.
enough, we probably had one of your hoods. My old man growing up drove
Oh yeah.
he drove a Motion Camaro for years.
Well, I didn't. I should have brought the other book with me, right? I have one. Yeah, have you seen the Motion book?
No, I haven't.
It's on. You'll see it on. What is it? Where do you buy books from? What's it?
Probably Amazon. or-
Amazon, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you can
in
get
there.
it there.
Yeah, Motion Performance, the diary or the life of a street racer or something
Yeah,
like that.
they were too cool.
Well, with the newer, the late '60s ones, early '70s ones, every hood and scoop and different thing in here I made.
Right.
And then in the front of my book, you'll see I sent it. It had Joel's. He told me about it, Joel Rosen. He said, "Get the book, send it to me." He lives in Florida, and send it to him. And he gave me a nice autographed thing and a little note, and it's like a one-of-a-kind thing.
Right.
It's really special.
It's awesome to me. I look back at the Motion stuff and I laugh. They still do that today. I mean, there's companies like Hennessy and that.
You can't believe what's going on with old car stuff. Steve's involved with old cars. He has collector's cars, and he move them and fix them and does this and that with them, goes to shows. I built for some guy in Jersey here, the Mako Shark. That was a version of the Corvette, fancy one, racy looking thing. Then I just finished making the molds for the guy for, that's all on my phone, but it's called a Phase 3 Corvette that he was doing, which was just, they're modifying stock Corvettes.
Right.
That's all it is. Yeah.
Well, but why I laugh at it is not that they didn't build amazing products, but like you'd bring a car to Motion and they'd take stuff out of it and charge you money.
Of course.
Like you'd bring it there with air conditioning, you get it back without air conditioning.
go.
You'd bring it there with a radio, get it back without a radio. The more money you paid, the more stuff they took from you. All they did was strip
He
it
was a
and
good-
put a little power
He
in
was
it.
a good businessman, very good, and he's one of the first people that had his own dyno.
Right.
Joel had it when he was
Chassis
in Brooklyn,
dyno.
huh?
Chassis dyno.
Chassis dyno,
Yep.
and that's his secret. He would just check stuff and do this and that. And
Yeah. Fine tuning.
He did it. He actually
Yep.
he didn't sit up with a computer and tell somebody to do it. He did it himself.
Right.
He did it himself, and then they would test him on Sunrise Highway.
Route
Right out front.
27.
Right.
Route 27.
Yeah.
Big patches of rubber all
Oh
over
yeah.
the place. Yeah.
Every story my old man has is from there. So he used to race them all back in the day on the street. He had a Corvette shop back in the day in East Rutherford called the Corvette Doctor,
Huh.
and he used to put Corvettes together
That doctor.
right on Main Street, right across from the train tracks
No,
there.
I've never been there, but I remember that Stingray I bought. I bought it from a guy, Sunshine Auto, over in Island Heights, and he got it from a place with that name, I think.
It could be. He did
It
a
was
lot of cars
fancy
back
body. It was actually a fiber fab car body. You know, it's something you put on your Corvette.
then. Right.
I didn't know what it was. It looked like the original Stingray, so I thought, wait, I gotta go.
Yeah, he did a lot of them. I mean, his thing was glass, so he started out with cars, and then that's actually how we wound up here. Sold his body shop in the late 80s and came down the shore. But when you're from North Jersey and you move down the shore, you think you went in like the Twilight Zone. There's not even a traffic light in town,
Right.
So he just started roaming around looking for work and wound up doing like mobile fiberglass stuff.
I
And
did
then
the same thing.
everybody loved him. So
thing.
he wound up running the service department here back when they used to sell Silvertons and
Oh, yeah,
all that
okay.
stuff.
Sure
And
about that.
yeah, and he wound up. That's how we wound up with this place. Is they eventually went belly up and called him to come run this place until they found new owners and never found new owners, and here we are.
Good for you.
So-
That's fun stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. It's what's cool about it is like you bringing up making the parts for motion and
Right,
stuff like that.
right.
So much of what we do, people think is just about the offshore stuff. Like you guys just made your name that way. But I know you. I have friends of mine. Like, do you know the name Bobby Swade?
No.
Owns Chips Follies Campground.
Well, let's see. Yeah. I would. I don't know the name Suede. I know Chips.
Yeah, so
And-
that's his mom and dad that own that there.
Yeah. I know the both of them. Oh, the son,
Bobby,
He had
yeah.
a big jacked up pickup.
There's
truck
him and
stuff.
Fred. Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
Bob.
yeah.
So just funny enough, like it's like as cool as this is to have you guys in for the offshore aspect of things. Like I've said your name and had people that live next door to me be like, I know that guy. He made me a part for my car, or he made me
Yep.
a cool thing for
Yep.
my boat, or and it's just cool to get you guys in because it's so relatable and people don't realize it.
Well, yeah, it's all. You get when you're young, you're looking at. You want to do stuff. I went in the Navy one tour, had, a couple of years, chasing Russian submarines out off an aircraft carrier. That was fun. But when that was, I said, that's it. I'm going to go do something on my own, and that's what I wound up doing.
Right.
Get together with a terrific guy, my Big Al, and who's now passed on, and we just did stuff.
Right.
Made sports car bodies for friends. I drove to California because I saw in the Hot Rod magazine everything was in California, and I said, well, nobody here knows what's going on in the East, so I drove my Beetle out there, and I got a job at a boat factory, and I learned how they do fiberglass, and that's what I brought back. It's do it higher quality. That's what Arano saw me doing.
Right.
When we were building a cigarette, I put all that sailboat know-how into that 39 cigarette.
Right.
And it's just
But
being careful.
The reason why I bring it up, from the skiffs to the motion stuff, is everything that you've done was dynamics, hydrodynamics, aerodynamics,
Yeah.
right? And so what I've always heard about your team in particular is that you guys were great with that. You were great with the hulls. You were great with fiberglass. You were great. Stanch talks extremely highly of
Studied
you.
everything.
Yeah. And so what exactly did that translate into for you moving into some of the stuff you did after Indigo there?
Well, we just continued on. Let's see, the speed skiffs, we just cleaned that all up, made that right. And since then, nothing really with boats, just repairing boats.
Well, no, I mean, so
I know what he did. I know some of the other stuff that they used to do too. He's being very modest. The bottoms were straight, or they put They're supposed to be flat as a table, and they'd gull wing them,
Right.
trap air in them. There was some other things on the port side of the boat. You always made left-hand turns. Well, you sharpen those lift strakes, and it just comes in like a
Yeah.
V-bottom.
Right.
Yeah, he won't tell you that. But, you know,
There's too much
there's
to
a,
tell.
Yeah, there's a lot of little stuff that happens.
But
Stay
there's,
tuned. Yeah.
But there's not. What's so cool is like this show. There's no time limit here.
Okay, good.
And people that watch this show, that's what they want to know. They want to know the tricks.
Well, that's what I watched the other day, and that's what really turned me on. I said, Steve, we watched the whole show with Stanch.
Right.
I said, man, this is a good deal.
It's just fun,
You
man.
were in it too.
Yeah, it's just a good time, you know. But so one of the things I noticed about Longshot is that boat had such a good attitude. Now I talk about attitude a lot on this show, and I hope that people are starting to get the message of how important that is. It's not about when you're talking to your buddy on Saturday and he's got a 95-mile-an-hour boat, or you're talking to your other buddy who, you know, was out jumping waves in 12-footers. What did it look like when it was doing it? You know, is it all out of control? Is it bent out of shape, or is it over, running nice, running true, running straight? That's what caught my eye about your builds, all of them, but
Okay.
particularly Longshot.
Yeah, what I learned, what he and I learned, and I didn't do it. He told me, well, why don't you read this? And then I got busy. We got busy on it. So I learned about making the bottom perfectly flat, perfect, no hook, no what's the other one?
Rocker.
No rocker.
Pool table straight.
Exactly.
Right.
And it took weeks and weeks to sand the bottom. I made up a jig. Again, everything's in the book. We made up a jig. We brought the Longshot up. We made up a jig. It was just like the molds at Cigarette, which, by the way, I copied them. And then we came back and rebuilt and welded up these things, the things they hold them up. So one guy virtually could spin that 39-footer around wherever he wanted it.
Right.
And that's how we did. Then we lengthened, I messed with the strakes. I widened them. Whatever they were, I made them a little bit wider. And that wasn't, no formulas, it's just like a feeling you get when you look at it. And then I brought them back. We learned about center of balance, that center of gravity.
Right.
And we would take it to our friend's yard with his travel lift, like you have, and then we did a piece of piling, laying on its side and bring the thing down till it stayed balanced. Put a mark on the side. That's where that's where the strakes are gonna end, right there.
Right.
And to give yourself, I did it being selfish. I wanted a smooth ride, and the smoothest places on the boat is at the center
Right.
of balance.
Right.
That's why I did it. Well, sure enough, it lifted it up. Now, in the book, there's pictures of Indigo when it was a production boat, still black and white, P boat, shot from virtually the same spot. And then a year later, when we were forced to get out of the P class because of the hood scoops they put on the back, some little pro stock hoods. Oh, that's how they got us. That's how my good friends got us out of the P class.
What, that was some kind of advantage, you mean?
What, the hood scoops?
Yeah. That's what they were
That
claiming?
was their excuse to the APBA. So you can't be in the production. Wellcraft doesn't sell a Scarab with
okay.
those things on there.
I got you. So
know?
it became modified.
Hull and deck
No.
is brochured by manufacturer. They had to make at least 5 of them. That's how Sudfin
Right.
built they 5, 6,
Well, the
7
deck
boats.
was, but it was the hood that fits into the. Anyway, I said, okay, that's enough of their crap. Right? That's enough. We're going to go to the sport class. That's the ultimate little boat class. And that's full of guys with Gorilla engines that really go a lot faster than we even dream
Right.
about. But we'll go there. And what did we do out of the box at the Bacardi down in Florida? That was the one with Bikini going to Bimini.
Yep.
We got third in the sport class, believe it or not.
No shit.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, that's-
Couldn't believe it. Yeah, okay, guys. Now look what you made us do.
Right.
That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
That
That's-
whole metamorphosis of the Indigo, from the time it was a production boat to when we eventually sold it,
Yep.
we did, like you said, hydrodynamics, extremely important on the bottom. Balance. There was a formula that one of the engineers gave me to find CG. I said, well, this is too complicated. Let me just put it on a telephone pole and just
Yeah,
kind of
it's
balance
like-
it. You get in the front, I'll get in the back. Let's balance it. And that's exactly what we did. Position of the gas tank is extremely important.
Yep.
It should be on the center of gravity. So when it's full or empty,
Doesn't
it
make a
rides the same.
difference. Right.
Then we learned about, because I was deeply involved with product integration. And I ran a lot of the step bottom boats, and Reggie started that.
Right.
And a little step is good. Bigger step has got to be better.
Right.
And then the boats would roll up on their
Yeah, it
sides.
got a little too much.
Oh, it was awful. It's embarrassing. But the hydrodynamics of the gear case and things that went on with that, we at one time decided to go faster. We called a meeting and said, well, let's just raise the drives another inch.
Yeah, or you see a lot of the boats from back then, they would just cut the skegs off.
Dangerous.
Yeah, extremely
Yeah,
dangerous.
Yeah, that's,
No,
Like-
we actually said, well, how long could it take? Just where to lift the drives up an inch.
Right.
Well, you got to pull the engines out. You got to redo the exhaust. You got to cut the hole differently. You got to fix the hole.
Right.
No, it was a week later. Said, who said how easy this was going to be?
Oh, yeah.
But all that little stuff made a difference. And the bottom line to me, because I ran a lot of product out of Lake X in testing,
Right.
you should be able to deftly take your hands off the wheel at over 100 miles an hour, and it
leave
tracks true. You know it's not going to do anything stupid.
Right. I call that Area 51.
Yeah.
Not Lake X. You're not allowed to know what goes on in there.
And a lot of people didn't either. You'd see somebody running and say, well, what's he testing? I said, I have no idea.
Yep.
Right.
But, yeah, we ran some extremely fast stuff. I ran 141 miles an hour in that lake.
Wow.
And it'll scare the living hell out of you because you take the turn on the south end, which was real tight, at 75, and then you throttle
Right.
up. And because we're in a cockpit, and you just look at the rearview mirror, and all you see is white water coming off the back of it. And I'm thinking, you better slow this baby down. You're going to go into the next lake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of tight. And that's the reason why they left the lake. It was going to be too
Right.
dangerous. Somebody was going to get killed.
It was pretty small, wasn't it?
3 miles long, 2 miles wide.
Yeah. So when you're trying to search for those setup numbers at that top
Oh, with
Top
the, with the
speed.
big boats, so you just
running
couldn't do
out.
it.
Yeah. But it's a shame because the facility, I've been to the facility once. It's absolutely incredible. And I wasn't there when it was operational. I was there when they shut that. They didn't really shut it down, but they stopped doing stuff there in like 03, 04.
Yeah, the lease was up, and they decided not to renew it.
Yeah, and I was there as it was everything being trucked out. But even just walking around, you could get the feel of how cool this must have been.
this is just a good place.
Oh, yeah.
It feels right.
Well, to us, it's a candy store. You know,
Yeah, but
they had
not-
every propeller, every exhaust. I mean, that was the trick, and they need to do that again. Like I had guys here when I was a kid. I can remember skaters and stuff that would come through this shop, and they just got back from Lake X, and they'd have 10 different sets of propellers, all kinds of trim tabs and all kinds of stuff, because anything they tried, Mercury would put in a box, and when you went to leave, they'd say, hey, this worked, this worked, this worked, and you just start writing a check. It was a great deal for Mercury,
Well, we had a joke back then. We couldn't afford all those kind of props and stuff. We used his brains, and he had S&S helped you out.
S&S helped me out a lot
Yep.
in New York.
So we had maybe one extra set of props, okay? And then we were working with Ellswick down in Florida one time, and we're going to go testing, or they're going to test it. And he brings, the dually. So our question was, it's a trivia question, how many layers of props fit in the back of a dually? It's like 40 sets of these props,
Right.
whatever they cost. They're big, big money.
Right.
But that's what it takes to go fast.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
Well, and I'm finding that in my Phantom, my bubble boat. You
Well, you don't have to. You don't have to
It's
say
okay. I like it.
It's like Bubble Boy from Seinfeld.
I
right?
like it. But it's funny. You go one pitch in either direction, and it's a totally different boat.
Yeah.
You go. I go from like my 30 where it runs all the way out off its tail, and you almost can't drive it, to the 29 where it's glued to the water. And it's just differences in rake. Really, like a lot of people don't understand rake and propellers and what that does. Everybody thinks it's blades. Like the odd number blades give you bow lift, the even number blades give you transom lift. Well, it's like, yeah, but that's only half the story.
That's right.
And it's funny how far you can dive into propellers. Like what I think I know is barely scratching the surface of people who really understand them.
You should go to an expert. Really.
Oh, yeah,
Whatever you're doing, even though we all think we're experts, we're really not.
Right.
The expert is the guy that can find the expert.
Yeah, well, right now, the only expert I know of, there's two of them, is Jim Herring and Mark Wilson. I don't know if either of you know Mark
know them?
Wilson.
I don't know Mark Wilson. I know Herring.
Right. Mark Wilson did. He's from the UK. He's done a lot of tunnel boat racing and stuff like that over the years. His son Craig ran the King of Shaves fountain.
Yep,
If you've ever
sure.
seen that, yeah.
Yep.
And he just does phenomenal work. He just understands propellers. We would send him like a set of our Herrings that are working worked by Jim, who's not magical, but damn near it. And we'd send them down to Mark, and Mark would send them back, and it would be night and day. And it'd be like, how could you have found that? They were so good to start with. How did they get better? You know, it's incredible what you can find.
I had the luxury of working with some of the finest prop guys in the nation.
Yeah.
And we were working on a project with the Blackhawk. It was a surfacing Bravo gear case.
Right.
And nobody could understand why it wouldn't run the way it should have. And a guy named Ronnie Steiner, and he was a prop guy, one of the prop guys down at the lake. And I said, can you make me a set of props for this project? And he says, sure. Well, what happened was the guy that was the head of the Blackhawk project got in a war with Ronnie Steiner. And Ronnie says, okay, I'll make you props. What's your account number? And he says, well, I don't have an account number for props, you know, because these are going to be expensive.
Right.
So I just asked him, I said, look, I don't have an account number, but can you make props? He says, for you, yeah. Change the gear ratio on the drive, 2.5 inches up, where the torpedo, it would ski the water coming off the back of the boat. So the only thing that was actually in the water were the propellers and a skeg.
Right.
The forward was a 31 4-blade, 17 diameter.
Wow.
The aft was a 5-blade, a 33, 17 diameter. Wow. You could take, we had a 20-foot cigarette. It was our mule, and it had a big block in it. And you could actually take and run that boat with the old props that Mercury provided. You put it in gear and run 7 miles an hour, so you couldn't dock it.
Right.
And but these, you'd put it in gear, nice manners. You'd get it out, and had enough, had a 15-degree rake in it on both those props. So when you'd run it, you trim it, and it would just sit up like a bass boat.
Right.
At 80 miles an hour.
Right.
And it ran 60, 65 with a Bravo.
Those Blackhawks were an awesome project.
Well, they pulled the plug on it because they didn't get the sales. But I have one, and I'll show you a picture of it, that ran that boat, that's 4,000-pound cigarette,
Right.
80 miles an hour.
Yeah, they were, I mean, from what you see of them, they were awesome, but they just never caught on. I don't understand.
Lousy props.
Yeah, that's really what
Wrong
it boils
gear
down
ratio
to.
and lousy props. See,
Right.
with the stern drives, you could take and use 6 different gear ratios.
Right,
So we got the props, and we was going to say, let's just change gear ratios until it works right.
right.
And it came up to a,
Uh-oh.
here we go again.
We got
Here we
another
go.
one, huh? It didn't do this at all, the last one.
No.
I think that's the question on is my,
Can't forget that.
Here we go. I was eating cookies. Sorry.
That's okay.
My trivia question on props was, how many lobster pots can you cut loose in a race before it makes you stop? And the answer was, I think we made it through them, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
All the way through 'em?
Praying that we wouldn't get tangled up in those lines.
But
They don't make props like they used to.
But the fishermen back in Plymouth were very upset
I would imagine so.
because they lost their pots. Yep.
Yeah, we did cut some lines. Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
So I think just before we had an issue there, we were talking about some of your work to the bottoms of some of your projects and stuff like that. And I just want to, before we go completely through that, you're back involved with some of the skiff project now.
Well, I had the molds and made them, and then I sold my business, and then lo and behold, Christian found the molds, or he bought the molds that I had made.
And just for everybody listening or watching, you can't see Christian DiColo on camera, but he's in the room with us
Right.
from Battle Wagon.
Yeah. He's not photogenic.
No, especially not without his beard.
Right. So, yeah, I in fact, I just did a job for Christian because he got the molds, but he didn't get the hood mold. So I had to recreate. Fortunately, we found an existing one down in Mays Landing, and the owner was nice enough to loan it to us, and I made the molds for Christian. The guy gets his hood back, and you got the molds, and so he asked me when he had the mold, he says, I didn't get any directions with how to build the boat. I said, dude, it's common sense. Just build it.
Right.
You'll figure it out.
Sure.
But there's hardware to be made. You have to know where to
Yeah.
get hardware and all that.
Yeah. I just think it's cool because being from the Jersey Shore, it's such a cool piece of history
Yes.
coming back. And
Yeah.
I don't think, is there anybody else doing that anymore? I mean, can you go buy one?
I'm sure there are because there were so many people popping. They get a boat and they pop it. There's molds here and there.
Right.
And I don't know whose is the best. The best thing to do is try to go by the rule book. Start with the rule book and go to the rules. then cheat from there.
Right.
But the best thing is make it the way they want it. That way
Right.
you don't go in there with a guilty conscience.
Right.
And then if you're being left in the dust all the time, well, then you got to figure out what are they doing.
Right.
That's all.
I was thinking, like, when I saw the pictures and the videos of that stuff coming together, it would be really nice to see another club or organization fire up for those guys here on the East Coast. I think once APBA fell away from that out here, there hasn't been anybody to pick up the torch and keep running with it.
You mean the small boats?
Yeah.
The skiffs? Well,
Yeah.
there is down near us. It's the Garvey Association. And for those who don't know, Garvey's a flat-bottom boat about, 16, 18 foot long with a big V8 in it. And it's just flat as can be, and a skiff is a flat bottom, but it has simulated wooden side like planks.
Right.
So the skiff steers by laying it on its side, and it digs in,
Right.
and away it goes. So,
But they're actually running races, the Garvey guys?
I think they're still doing it, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome to hear because
Should
I
we
haven't.
let you know? I'll let you know.
That'd be great. I'll include it, and I'll include them as well.
Oh,
in
they're
this,
interesting,
in the
yeah.
show. Yeah, because that's such a cool part of. When I was a kid, that's what I grew up doing. There wasn't offshore races to go find. I would go to the Barnegat Bay races and
Yes.
stuff and watch those guys, and
Yep.
they're crazier than us.
They are.
I'll tell you a story. Guy's name is Mike Agiello, and he raced. I believe it was a Garvey. The flat bottom. We were in a Garvey. And first thing, I didn't understand you had to walk out to the boat. Like I'm an
Yeah.
offshore guy. Mine gets craned in,
Right.
and I jump in the seat. So here I am with, holding my cell phone up and walking halfway out in the water to jump in the boat. And I'm like, what am I doing, man? So he didn't have a co-pilot for the race. So we brought them with us to Patchogue, Long Island. Now, we should have known better, but Patchogue it's a South Bay.
Yeah.
It's 3s, 4s. Now, we ran them early in the morning before the wind had a chance to really stir the bay up, but it was still 2s, so I'm getting in the boat. Mikey looks over at me, and he goes, all right, here's your job. Watch the oil pressure gauge. If it gets low, yank it. And I go, what do you mean yank it? He goes, yank the kill switch. I'm like, okay, all right, I could do that, and he goes, because if you don't, it's going to blow up and be all over us. And I'm like, got it, We're heading out to the race, and he goes, all right, and if it's listing this way, you got to really hang on and help me, balance this thing. And I'm like, I'm kind of getting into it, right? And I'm like, this is kind of cool. I've only seen it. I've never been in one, right? So we get the green flag. My opinion immediately changed. I wanted to get out of that boat so bad. I was terrified. And you know what it was I'm not, first of all, no freeboard, no nothing. But, I grew up doing silly stuff like that, hydro sports and stuff like that. So, I was kind of used to that aspect of it, but those guys run 6 inches off each other. They don't they really race into the turns. It's like Dover Downs,
Yeah.
And then he's saying to me, if it flips over, do your best to get away from it. And I'm like, does that happen a lot? He's like, last time. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. I was terrified. I think he killed an alternator or something. I forget what happened, but he couldn't do the next race. I was so happy. I've never been so happy that a boat broke ever in my life. But yeah, those guys are nuts. I would love to see that come back to the shore. And then now with you and Christian working on that, is that going to be a battle wagon project? Is that what that's going to be, or just something for fun?
What's that? Oh, see, he's full of secrets.
TMI.
Come on,
Too
come
much.
on.
Here's something to look at. Everybody who likes speedboats, that's what this is all about. In Australia and maybe New Zealand, they have, like in the marshy areas where there's all sorts of little rivulets all over, they lay out courses, and they call them tinnies. So what they are, my cousin, I'm half Australian, but so my cousin says, yeah, they just, one guy in the back with the outboard holding onto the handle, steering with the handle, and the other guy is like the monkey on a sidecar, up front, moving around, back and forth. And these guys really get moving. And
Oh, the twist, the ones with the little outboards?
yeah,
They're out of control.
they're out of control.
They drift them.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
The guy in the front gets up on the bow eye and plants it, and they drift them around the turns and stuff. It's
Yep.
wild.
One of my nieces, her husband got killed doing it not long
Oh,
ago.
I'm sorry to hear
so
that.
you got to be careful,
Oh yeah. Well, it's incredibly dangerous.
It's fun to watch, though.
But it's awesome. Yeah. But everything we do is so dangerous.
Yeah, I saw people killed in Garvey's down in West Creek one year.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
We were watching. What a mess.
Yeah, there's everything we do. Anything you do on the water is going to be dangerous. You just
Everywhere.
can't control it, you know. But it's like even those guys where they go inland and I actually don't know the name of that organization, but they dig the road courses. The guys with the jet drives,
Oh, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
sure.
yeah,
like that. If it wasn't those roll cages are roll cages, but sometimes you watch some of those wrecks and it's like, man, I don't know how they walk away from that, or they put them over and they're stuck in the mud and they're trying to roll them back.
Yep.
They're nuts.
Yep.
They're out of control. But everything we do is dangerous. I'm sorry to hear that, but it's
yeah.
it's part of the game, man.
Well, you want to see action? Go down to the Mullica River on the weekends.
That's where I am every weekend.
You go down there. Okay.
Absolutely.
You
Ski
know.
Beach, just short of Sweetwater. I'm
That's
there
right.
every weekend. It's
Okay,
my
yep,
mainstay.
yep.
I live right there. I live in Little Lake Harbor.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So I'm a huge. I don't really get with protests very often, but I will definitely protest greenhead flies. So
You got to get the right stuff to put on.
oh man, I grew up with the baby oil and everything else my mom used to put on me to try to keep. I just go up the river now. You go up the Mullica, get in the fresh water. I shouldn't be telling people this. Now our poor little river's going to be packed. But oh yeah, I love it up there, man. And the guys with the jet drive ski boats and stuff up there, it's a blast. No,
Yeah.
it's like a little horsepower hub in South Jersey.
And
Nobody
they
knows
have
about.
extremely good places to stop for a sandwich and,
Oh, yeah.
and a beverage.
Yep.
And people go between this one and that one. Mott's Creek and Sweetwater,
Yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah, you got Mott's Creek there. You got Breezes, which is a new bar and
Breezes,
grill
yep.
right in Viking there.
Yep.
And right around the corner from there, if you want to go in the bay a little bit, is Oyster Creek, the Oyster Creek Inn, and they got
Yeah,
great food and stuff.
they do.
I love it down there.
That's a little bit more formal, but yes, it's great.
A little bit. They've cleaned it up a bit over
Yeah.
the years, but I can remember being in there at 3-4 o'clock in the morning when I was a
yeah.
kid. You know, we'd have the dog sitting at the table with us inside, and they're just awesome people, Jason and Scott, and the whole gang down there. But I love that area
Oh, I do
because.
too.
You know, like, and I really shouldn't be talking about it because so many people are going to come hang out there now. But there's like a couple of cops that patrol the area. They live in the area. They're cool guys.
They are.
We'll be sitting up at the beach and they'll come say hi to us and hang out. And they're not up there to bust anybody's chops.
Nope.
And it's 21 miles, I think. I think it's exactly 21 from the mouth of the river to
Right.
Sweetwater Casino. And it's just S turns of
Yep.
dead flat, and everybody up there loves it. Like the faster you run, the cooler they think
Yep.
it is. It's not like they're there to get mad at you, and it's just a blast, man.
Yep.
I'm up there every weekend
Oh, it's not a
in my
straight
checkmate.
run. It's back and forth and back. Yep.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And there's so many, like, you start to figure it out. There's so many little shortcuts and
Yep.
side cuts that people don't know about. My brother one time, he runs a 21 Challenger, one of Rich Lures and Linder's design. And he's got a 510 Supercat motor in it, dry sump, makes like almost 900 horse.
Gosh.
And it's wild, you know. And we'll get that thing strung out heading up the river, and it'll run like in the teens, like 111, 112, just short of like 113. And it's wild to get up there and get in some of those back cuts and stuff. But he's racing a guy in a straight bottom 38 Formula, right, with a pair of big 572s. It runs like almost 100, you know. And the Challenger will do it until there's something to upset it, and you can't really hang it there,
That's
you know.
right.
So my brother chucks down a little Mosquito Creek. He goes out around the channel where it's supposed to be, right? Well, my brother's getting to the end of it at about 100 and realizing it's a dead end.
Oh.
And it's probably too shallow to pull off, right? So he just trimmed it up and stuck to it and actually lethal weaponed it over the marsh and back in the water
Get
and beat
out.
the guy. I remember sitting there being like, that guy's out of his
Yep.
mind, man.
Either now or never.
If you don't know Anthony Smith, you guys should really get with the program. My brother's out of his mind. The stuff I've seen him pull off at home, it's like I watch him at the boat races, and I'm like, that's nothing. You should see.
Well, if you look at the history of United States when it was formed and everything, down in that area where we live, because I live on the south side of the river, with the British and then the Patriots, or whatever you want to call it, the rebels.
Yep.
So they would dig fake channels in because the way it goes back and forth. Some of them worked and some of them didn't. And they would trap. They would get down one. The British see it and they take it. And now, how do you turn around something with 3 masts?
Yep.
There's no reverse. There's no nothing. You got everybody get out with it. So that's what some of those things are for way back then.
Right, and that Mullica River actually wasn't a natural river, right? They cut most of it
No.
on the way back.
No, that's it's seen its share of.
It was
bottom where-
it was a creek, I think,
Well-
and then they were shipping ice up and down it or something.
Well, you can ship. Yeah, they. Let's see. The ice. Well, oh, from the ponds up in the pines.
Yeah.
In the wintertime.
Yep.
Yeah, because nothing, you couldn't do anything. It's so damn cold. So they would
Right.
cut ice, pack it in straw, put it in a boat, and then bring it down, and it would go to the cities or
Right.
what have you. Yeah.
That's wild. That.
Oh, that's really an interesting place.
It is.
To look around. I found a couple iron mines back in the woods.
Really?
Old iron, because we at Batstow, that was the main one where the forges and stuff were, but they were scattered around the pines.
Right.
And in one of them, we found a friend of mine had a metal detector. I says, "You're not going to find any metal here. It's iron. It's going to throw it off." Sure. He brings up, we got an axe head, just the head, and it's all packed with dirt, cleaned it up. But it was, the whole top was peened over because I guess they broke the handle one day, so they use it as a splitting wedge.
Right. Right.
And it was all handmade, with layers
Yep.
and layers of iron and iron.
That's what's so cool
Pretty
about
cool stuff.
roaming through that Batstow place is seeing how everything was
The
done
whole
and all.
I followed him in the pines when I first moved down, but then he moved away. But I've been in the pines every weekend. We have property up there. A bunch of us got together, and motorcycles,
Right.
shooting.
Well, we'll have to get together this summer because I boat there. I boat there every weekend.
Yeah.
We'll go have some
Yep.
fun. That'd be cool.
Yep.
Well, I got what else you want to cover in here? You want to get through some of your book, or you got most of it through?
I don't know. There's all the things in there. The pictures.
We're gonna get the
Building
pictures.
the cigarette.
Yeah.
Ellswick's in there, and you didn't see Arno, but right where you can see where he came in.
You know what's really cool, and I have to thank you guys for coming in. The coolest thing to me these last couple of podcasts is getting around guys that spend a lot of time around Don, and to get the real opinion. You watch so many of these documentaries, and there's some that really do a nice job. Brownie did a nice book on Arenal.
Yeah.
There's been some really good movies done, but some really not so good movies done, like that King of Speed thing that came out with John Travolta. Is that what it was called? With
I
John
think so,
Travolta,
yeah.
Speed Kills, I think it was. That was just horrible. I mean, that movie should have never went out. I mean, thank you for trying, you know what I mean, to promote the sport, but it
Check
was
with somebody. Yeah.
it was so horrible. The facts just weren't there. But anyway, people have such a bad impression of where the sport came from, what it was, what it represented, who the kings of it were, that it's so good to get you guys on and really show that that wasn't what the sport was. It wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong, where the drugs and the stuff and all that. Was it all around? Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, the boat is just a tool to do. You have fun, or you want to smuggle, or you want to use it for military purposes,
Right.
whatever. My aircraft carrier, I think we crossed the Atlantic one time in like 10 days. It was flat out the whole way from Norfolk to Gibraltar.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It didn't go that fast.
No, but that's a trek, man.
But it was like riding on the subway. It was vibrating, everything off. This thing's
Full
gonna
load.
fall apart. Yeah, quarter mile of steel's going to hit the bottom soon. But
That's wild.
yeah, yeah.
But it's just so cool to hear the real stories, what it's really about. Like Don letting you come down there and use his molds and stuff. And
No, not Don. It was Hal Halter.
sorry, I
He
keep
bought
messing
it.
that up.
He bought it from Arano, sold it to someone. Anyway, Halter owned it.
But even to having coffee with Don,
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
that's just, you don't think, especially guys like me, especially guys my age, where we have such a distorted view of what the past was.
No, he was. To me, it seemed like he was a very regular guy.
Right.
We're on. He didn't talk down to me. It seemed like we're on the same level.
Right.
And he asked me, just come on over and take a look at see if you would want to. I'd like you to run my production or build the boats, whatever that meant.
Right.
You know.
But it seemed like he tried to do that for a lot of people.
I don't know.
Like I had Charlie in last week, Charlie McCarthy from Banana Boat Co. And that's exactly how he got started. Don just walked up to him one day and put him in the business.
That's good.
And what's cool about that is Don was a revolutionary. And he was a revolutionary in a lot of ways, but particularly his thinking. The guy didn't view competition the way normal people view competition. He would put you on your feet just so he had somebody to chase him. Like he needed that.
Yeah.
He needed that drive. He was the ultimate salesman. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
he needed somebody to push the innovation with him and help him move the sport forward. And
Sure.
nobody better to do it than him, in my opinion. I mean,
No,
the
he
guy,
was a smooth character.
he was awesome.
Very high impression of him.
Yeah. I just wish I could get in a time capsule and go back,
Yeah, talk to him, see what's going on. Just walk up and down 188th Street.
That must have been incredible.
There was what's this guy's name right next door to Cigarette? The Signature Boats.
Signature?
Tommy Adams. He was building I don't know, smaller boats like 30-footers and stuff like that.
Right.
there.
And actually funny because people who watch these podcasts are going to see a lot of the same things come up. But between Charlie and Billy and this one now, I talked about Signature. Did you guys happen to know a guy, Rich Farrell? Ran Jazzberry Patch 38 cigarette.
No.
He had a 27 Magnum as well, Michelob, for a little while. But he was telling me some stories about that Signature plant. And he's like, dude, if anybody knew what was going on over there.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not talking. I don't care.
I would get, I know, and I know.
None of my business.
We're way past the statute of limitations,
I
but
know,
still.
I don't want
But-
anybody to think bad of
Not at all, not at all. But he would tell me some of the stories about, like, you know, what that company was and what it came to be, and you know, and I'm like, man, the stuff that would just in what 2 square blocks there, you know, the stuff that went on.
Well, they had a big wall next to their place. It went all the way out to the water. That's all I can tell you.
That's it.
It's too cool, man. Who'd you have right there? You had Cigarette, Donzi,
Well, down the beginning, it was
Pantera, Formula.
Pantera was there, Formula was
was
there.
at the end of the street.
Apache.
Then Magnum. Then he built Magnum. Apache was on the other side of the street.
Now, was Apache always Fort Apache, or did that come after?
Fort Apache
Came after.
That came after. So they had the buildings, and then they put the marina up. Is that how that
Yeah.
worked? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the iconic, you know, like when you look up the pictures of that, they show you all the buildings and all, but that Fort Apache was quite the establishment.
Oh, yeah.
That was a crazy place.
Yeah. I never went in there. No.
Right. It's just nuts at how much, you know, just iconic things came from that
That
little
area.
spot.
Oh yeah. It was neat.
Yeah.
I mean, I just know driving into work every day to go to Cigarette,
Right.
and it's 90 degrees and 100% humidity, and no air conditioning.
Right.
That's all.
And being happy about it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to,
You're around the
It's a-
best in the business.
right, but I wanted to get it done.
Right,
I wanted to get the
right.
job done.
Right.
That's all.
It's just cool, man.
When
And
was the last time you were down there?
in where?
188th Street.
Me? Oh,
Yeah.
probably 2010 when we ran the Sunny Isles race. We took a ride through there.
Oh, we ran one out of there.
Out of Sunny Isles?
We ran one out of Sunny Isles. That was our pit side. Then I think we drove all the boats down south to where government cut is.
Right.
Right? It's not that far away.
No, it's not. And
So,
that's
yeah,
where
Sunny-
the Bimini run was.
That's the
and back
Bimini
up.
run out
Yeah.
of there. Yeah, that's right. Remember?
Yeah, they actually, Charlie, we were talking about it with Charlie, and Charlie said in 2008 they did the memorial race for Don there. It's that same run. And then 2 years later, we did it with Brad Schoenwald, who put on an event at a Sunny Isles where we went to Bimini and back. And I wish there was more of that. I really do. I wish, I wish there was a way to pull that off in a clean way. You know, the biggest issue we have, and I went through this with Charlie and Billy, is it's the permitting process.
Permitting, it's the liability.
Yep.
It's a new world.
Nobody will accept that there's risk. Like and that's what baffles me is, so what are you going to do? Eventually just nerf the world into a point where everybody just does the same thing every day? I mean, you got to let some people assume some risk and go have
Well-
some fun, you know?
We're running into the same thing with dirt bikes, with
Right.
enduro bikes, bikes like that. In New Jersey, especially in New Jersey, with law, everything is a rule against what you want to do. So we learn how to survive. And so if you come visit me, you'll see our secret.
I'm in.
Yep,
I'm in.
yep.
I'll come down, that's for sure.
Just have a look.
Yeah.
Have a look.
I think
I'd
we
be
might
glad
come
to
down
show
later.
you around.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yep.
I'd be excited for that. That'd be fun.
I got a comment about the Indigo, which is kind of a neat story. In the chase to make the boat go faster, Lindsay lightened up the deck. So
Oh, yeah.
he made a splash mold off of another boat. Was that up in Ocean Beach?
No. I did the side when I had to fix the Indigo after the bad accident. That was Ocean Beach. No, I use our deck, and I get as much of it to where the thing pops up, where the V part, where you stand.
Right.
And then I did some stretching right in there. But I wanted to build something that's light, very light.
So light that if you climbed up to the bow to get a line, he'd yell at you and say, "Get in the center of the deck."
in the center.
Because if you walked off that center, you could feel it. It was that soft
Yeah.
Right,
and that
right.
light.
It was just one
And
fly.
it was like an airplane wing. So
That's
it had a 4-degree angle of attack, which actually, when you got up to around 80, you could feel it lift. It would balance itself, but aerodynamically, it was actually picking the boat up.
Right.
Really?
Yes.
Just from the air going over the deck.
Well, the air was so intense that that little flip up, we had to he put tunnel boat cowlings in there.
Yeah.
So he made some real light tunnel boat cowlings, and so you wouldn't get that wind coming across the deck into your face.
Right.
Interestingly enough, where they were placed, that air would come over your shoulder and go into a set of scoops that were
Right.
right over your shoulder.
Right behind you. So
It would
3
cool
people, 2 openings, right to the engines.
cool the ambient temperature around the engine, and then it would exhaust all the heat out of the back. That gave us a mile an hour.
Now, how were you doing this? Because this isn't just guesswork. This is a lot of science.
Trial and error. Everything's trial and error.
Right.
You know, we just listen, we watch. That's how I do. I'll give you another aside on how to learn how to do stuff. After the '78 season, the boat was banged up after the Fats Domino Desert Classic.
Yep.
So I said, I got to check everything. I came up in the wintertime, up here. This is this area was where all hot rod guys are, Tom's River and everything.
Right.
And I would go to all these different marinas around where I know guys kept their boats for winter storage out there. And I would go around with my protractor and tape measure, and I measured every bottom of a known fast boat. And I would write, and I had these. Of course, you do it on the computer now, you know, but I did it all by hand. And then I go back, and then we figured out, well, so-and-so boat does this better, and this one does that better, because they all have different angles. I mean, the guys that built the original boats had something in mind to do it. Sutphen was very different than all the 24 degrees.
Right.
What do you have, 20 in the back and 26 in the front? Something
Yeah,
crazy.
feathered back.
Yeah.
So, you know, I looked at all of them and made a big record of them all.
Right.
And we just worked off of that. But that's how we learned things.
Well, it's just not many people were good at the aerodynamics. You know, that a lot of people thought they were, but, you know, when you look back in hindsight, nobody was really pulling it off. Like, you know, guys like you that you know, those changes you made there in Indigo and stuff like that, where it even translates into your work with the bender molds and stuff like that. You had it. You know, that's not just guesswork. I mean, like you said, trial and error, but that's a lot of what you saw was guesswork. You'd see those boats come out with the wings on them, and you know,
different things.
a lot of it was guesswork. But what you were doing was working. You know, and I only know because you have a track record, not just in offshore.
Well, I study things. Like the Wright brothers really figured it out, so I tried to work off of what they did. I'm making it a silly example, but that's who figured out
Well, it's a silly example,
why
but
a
really,
wing is why is it this way on the top and this way on the bottom.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff.
and it's a silly example, but it's not, because really, if you look at the two schools of thought, whether it was trying to get something up in the air or get something to run through the water, they were in their same stages of life. I mean, like in 1978, how many years had efficient powerboats been around? If you go 10 years prior to that, nothing was very efficient. Nothing was
You
very
mean speedboat type thing.
right.
Yeah.
Only hydroplanes back then, and
Right.
what is it? The ones they would run, the big wooden boats. You know, the fancy boats. They're huge. They had big airplane engines in them.
Oh, aircraft engines and
Yeah.
jets.
Right.
Signature tried that on 188th Street. They put a helicopter engine in one of their boats.
Did they?
Started it on fire. They couldn't figure out how to get that exhaust heat out of the boat fast enough. Yeah.
Right next to the acetone storage. Yeah,
Oh man. It's funny, but you know,
that's how you learn stuff.
but when you look, right, like you brought up, like the Wright brothers. I mean, there's planes in their infancy. Well,
Yep.
this was offshore in its infancy.
Yeah.
Sure it was.
People don't realize it because people were racing boats for 100 years. I mean, there was like the Miss America boat. I saw
Right.
the hardwood with the 4 small blocks in it.
Yeah.
You know, like that was 1906. I think that won a championship. So
Yeah.
racing's very old, but when we say racing, it's a general term for what it became. I mean, you guys were really at the breaking point.
It may be strange. I think about it now. From Long Beach Island, where we were, I was from Harvey Cedars, just a brand new transplant. Stanch, same thing.
Yep.
And prior to me, just before I moved there, there's a local dredge company, and their son, Mike
yeah.
Thomas, he was, what did he got killed in a construction accident right there at his house. But he drove the Miss Dodge Rebellion?
Miss Dodge Rebellion.
Yeah, factory boat. And they used to race hydroplanes right there at Ship Bottom where the big bridge is.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Oh, it was awesome, right? The whole
Wow.
island would come out for that.
I've never seen that.
That
I'll have to
would be
look that
in
up.
69 or something like that.
They're very cool, and there's some cool videos of them. There's some actually a really good movie made about them. Did you ever see the movie Miss Madison?
Yeah.
That's just a good history piece there for people that are listening that want to brush up on some of that stuff. But yeah, they were so cool. I didn't know that. I'll have to look that up.
But there's 3 guys from Harvey Cedars, different things, but
Yep.
all base. And he was Harvey Cedars too until you moved to Barnegat Light. Yeah.
Well, my old man, we only found out a couple years back talking with Johnny Stanch that he grew up around the corner. My old man grew up in Harvey Cedars.
Did he?
Yep. Yeah.
Straight.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Right where where the not that he grew up there. Their house was up in
Summer
Barnegat
house,
Light,
right, yeah.
but he did his summers in their summer house was up in Barnegat Light. He did his summers at the youth group right there.
Okay.
That big youth group by that church right there. I can't think of the name of it right
It's
now.
the sisters. I live right next to.
There's there's that sailing school right next to it and
there's
all.
sorts of stuff
yeah.
there.
Yeah, that's right. My old man grew up running that place.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Good.
he loved it because they came from North Jersey. So every summer
yeah.
he spent working down there was like vacation, not work.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
Yeah,
so
it is. Yeah.
it was
So
wild.
I want to go back to something on the bottoms of the boats. Steve and I went to a thing. We were invited by Billy Friends. You know him?
Yep.
National Powerboat, whatever it was, and we were invited up for we got an award for what was it? Some kind of offshore thing. So we got a first place, whatever. Billy Martin was there, and some other names. So one of the fellows that was there is
NPBA Hall of Fame.
Hall of Fame.
Oh,
There were a
cool.
bunch of
I'm in
guys
the
there.
Hall of
Very
Fame.
cool.
And they
Yeah.
even showed little pictures of the boats. It was fun. Right at Liberty State Park.
Right.
Right across from where the trade center was there then.
Yeah.
Or was it then? Was it
They,
there?
yeah, they used to watch it from
Yeah.
a building across the street when the planes hit it.
Yeah. So anyway, we're there, and one of the fellows I'm talking, the gentleman there, is Fury. What's his first
Mike.
name? Mike Fury. He's not quite. Is he my age or maybe a little younger?
He passed away.
The father.
Yeah.
And his son got killed in the speed thing.
Yes. Sorry.
Missouri.
I was thinking of the wrong Mike.
You were thinking of the son.
Yeah, I was thinking of the
That-
son. Yeah.
But the father's name was what? Mike also?
It was, I'm trying to think of it
They
because
made the boats in Long Island
Yeah.
before it went to Rhode Island.
Outer Limits. Yeah.
Outer Limits.
Outer Limits is what, yeah. So I'm talking to him at the thing, and we're having a good time, and I said, I was a big fan of making the bottoms right, just like we're talking about now. And then along come these, what do you call those things? The steps in them?
Step
Yeah,
bottoms.
Steps.
Yeah.
Along come these. Now, all I know was the notch in the back of long shot. But after that, I didn't know. I said, how do you figure out where to do that? What's the science behind it? I'm always trying to figure stuff out. And he's telling me a story. He says, well, what I would do, because it's very competitive in the Long Island area, he said, I would do something, and then he'd just put Bondo or something on the bottom to
Yep.
make one, and he'd go out and try. Then he said everybody would copy it. And he said, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just testing, which is how we do things, trial and error.
Yeah. They would work in reverse. They would actually build out from the bottom to build the steps into it and try it, and then
Yeah.
pull layers off
Yeah,
and change
yeah, yeah,
angles.
yeah.
And yeah.
Well,
He
it's-
told me at the Miami Boat Show, they had a boat they called a 38 Magnum, and I asked him the same thing, and he said, well, I'll tell you how I do it. He says, I'll make a change on the bottom of the boat, and a year later, my competition will be out there, and they'll have that change in the bottom of the boat. I said, so what do you do? He says, well, I fake them out. I put something on there that does absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says, that my term for that is dog shit on the hood.
Yeah.
He says, because I'll do that, and I'll make that change, and next year they'll make that change, and the boat goes slower, and I'm laughing because I just peeled it off, and it went
Yep.
fast. That boat
Yep.
was extremely fast, but he
Yeah.
was very keen on that.
To me, the guy who leads the charge with that is Reggie. Reggie's figured out the steps, and unfortunately his program stalled, back in the recession, 06, 07, 08. And since then it's kind of just been carried along, but not really improved on. But, you look at step bottom boats, Outer Limits runs amazing in a straight line. But you got to figure out how to get him around a turn. And the only guy that's doing that right now is Brian Forehand, a guy from Marker 17 Marine. You can look up some video of him running. He runs a 29 in the single engine class now, and he's really got that Outer Limits figured out. But like Moorhead said, he goes down in turn one, loops it around at over 100, and that was the end of his day. You know, and it's tough. Like I don't know. I wrestle with the steps. I wrestle with if I actually like the concept or not. You know, like I love running our fountain because the fountain is as predictable can be. You put that in a turn, and it tells you all the way around a turn what it's going to do. There's never a surprise.
Are there steps in the bottom of the fountain?
Yeah, too, but very different than an Outer Limits. And Outer Limits took the mindset of almost like a skater, where they start very small and they increase as they work their way back. And what that kind of, and I'm by no means an expert, but to me what it is when you get it in a turn, it loses contact very quickly, whereas a fountain, you have contact almost to the apex of any turn you're making. You know, you feel it getting loose until you really need to make that turn, and then from there you're chasing back and just kind of running it off. If you want to get pushy and you want to start tightening up that apex, they'll eventually come around on you. But the fountains run much truer in a turn, in my opinion, and I think as an overall boat, fountains really got that figured out.
Have you run any Nortex?
No, and I haven't, and not V-bottoms. I've been in a Nortec catamaran, but I've never been in a Nortec V.
They stopped making those a while ago. One of the last ones they made was for a friend of mine. He was the cameraman for Geraldo down in Central America.
Okay.
And he's a crazy guy, but he said, I want a V-bottom, and I want special things on it. And it was the last 38 they had done. We had a 38 that came to us from Nortec at the lake, and they said, can you prop this? And our guys that had those, he said, we need a set of 29s for a Bravo. So we had never put a set of 29s on a prop shaft. And he said, well, I need them. And we ran the boat. And it ran 88 miles an hour, a 37.
Closed deck or?
Closed deck.
Okay.
88 miles an hour.
Wow.
So now we're looking at this and say, well, let's take this. And we pulled it out. It was at the lake. We pulled it out, measured center of gravity, measured all the weight of the boat and everything else. And nobody was really sure exactly how fast that was, you know, how they accomplished that. So I went down and talked to Nils, who's one of the owners. He said, what's the secret of making this thing go fast? He said, the biggest issue that everybody has with those step bottoms, he says, your propellers don't push air, they push water.
Right.
He says, so you got to get water to the props.
Clean water to the props.
And then he took a string and he put it from the first step to the second step to the transom, and he showed me what they do there. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, these guys really have it figured out.
Oh, yeah.
And that boat was extremely fast. And it would run 88 in the middle of the summer with high humidity and 90-degree weather, or in the middle of the winter, you know, it would run a little bit colder because of the air density. But yeah, they really have their act together.
It's awesome, and there's a lot of really great companies. I only just use Reggie because he's done it over multiple applications. Like you look at, like I have significant experience in a 40 with Instigator. I have a significant experience in the 38 and the 35, and all of which are different bottoms.
Sure.
And all different angles of attack, and they all run exactly the same. It's incredible. They all achieve the same thing while achieving whatever the goal was with that build. It's incredible to me. I raced the purple one, the 38, with my old man. That boat, when you can run it through anything, it doesn't matter if it's 8s, 10s, whatever. You know, we actually, as a joke, you know, Herbie and Frank Kerbeck with the Island Runner. One year we went out with them with bone stock 525s, making 580 horse, right? With Bravos on, you know, probably 28s or 30s, something like that, something small in the ocean, and outran Island Runner. And they just don't understand like how it can do that. It's 8,000 pounds, and it just gets across the top good, man. They're just awesome pieces.
They got to run right. They have to have the right attitude.
Right.
In the pictures there, you'll see the Indigo when we first started, when we're, quote, racing going along. And then after the accident on the I-80, then I changed the bottom with his direction, and that was production. It went from 64 mile an hour. That's what a pair of TRS 280s would do.
Right.
Everybody was the same, 64.
Yep.
which to me, I was fast, you know. And then I did the bottom, and then we ran all the same power, everything the same the next spring. And we couldn't believe it. We said something's 71,
Yeah.
Right.
64 to 71. Same motors, everything the same, just with the bottom done.
Right. Did you ever race against any of the Vipers, any of the Futura Vipers? They came in the
What was
80s.
it?
Yeah, they were later.
They were 80,
just
81.
yeah, I knew one. Patriot Joe Umasilla.
Patriot was the first one. Yeah.
Yep. I know Joe.
Yeah, I'm always curious. They only made 11 of them before losing the molds, and
What do you mean losing?
they lost them in a fire.
Fire.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oy vey.
Yeah, and so of those 11, there's 5 remaining, and we have 2. So
Oh,
I
wow.
think we're on a quest to try to find the rest of them. but they, that's what was so impressive. That one's a little more worked up now. It's got some bigger small blocks in it, not 280s. But when we first got the Mary Kay, that was set up exactly how it used to race, and I couldn't believe it would run 70. Like it took a long time to get 70, don't get me wrong. But I was blown away at how fast it would run on minimal stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the balance, we screwed the balance up when we went to the big blocks. We had to cut the transom up, spread the center line, put the big blocks in it back on the transom, which what we should have did was push the firewall and stagger them. But putting the big blocks on the transom, we had to always carry 300, 350 pounds in the front.
Yeah.
So with the small blocks, with the transmissions and the TRSs and the small blocks pushed forward, just obviously lighter than a big block, it would just fly. I mean, you could get that thing out in the ocean and it would just fly as level, as perfect as could be. It was incredible.
Here's a story, not sexy, but it's on the same line. A friend of mine's a commercial fisherman out of Barnegat Light. He's got a 40-foot lobster boat that he uses for net fishing and all that. And he has to carry heavy weight in the front of it. Concrete, 500 pounds, whatever it is.
Right.
And he had heard about something up in Maine. That's where the boats originally came from. So he said, "Can you lengthen the boat for me?" I go, "Yeah." How long? We go from 40 to 44. So we added 4 feet. Cost a lot of money, this and that. We didn't have to move the engines or drive gear. And it picked up, it went from like 18 knots to 21 knots. Of course, we kept the bottom smooth, clean. I've learned that. And he can carry more fish and more ice and go faster. So there you go. The bottom's important no matter what you're doing.
Yep. It's got to be efficient.
Same stuff. Yep.
Yeah, it's wild. And then you get into the catamaran stuff of today, and that's just a whole nother world. It's crazy, the evolutions,
Yeah, but to me, a catamaran, I shouldn't say that. I'll get in trouble.
No, it's okay. My old man
A
ratted.
V-bottom is a boat.
My old man ratted me out 2
Catamarans.
podcasts ago. He let everybody know, man. I call them litter boxes. I can't. I'm not a.
What,
I'm
the
not.
catamaran?
I'm not a catamaran guy.
No, I'm not. I shouldn't say they're bad because they are more stable. And you go to Europe, and I've been on ferries over, I think, down the Virgin Islands, and they just get up on top, and they have hydrofoils going down. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But they're not speedboats, but they move right along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The catamarans of today, I think, outperform any V-bottom. Unfortunately, I hate admitting that, but it's just a different style of racing to me. It's just.
Well, you're racing on flat water now. You're not allowed to go ocean racing.
Yeah,
like
but
you
believe it or not, even in the ocean, these 388 skaters and 40 skaters and these big MTIs that Randy Chisholm's coming out with today, they're monsters. They get through the bump. It's incredible. They just go over it. My brother tells me all the time, I'm not. He tries to convince me.
We're getting to a level. What you're talking about, I understand all that, and it's great science and mechanical stuff, but the average guy has a gas station can't do that.
No,
He's down in the
not
P.
even if that guy had 15 gas
He's
stations.
down in the P class where we were.
Yeah.
Hands on. Those are the only guys that can afford the little boat. So
You know what's crazy today? You can't. One of those boats you see that in our class that we call Super Cat now. Those boats are $1 million plus.
yeah,
How could you possibly race? How could you sustain $1 million buy? That didn't even get you power.
Yeah.
So now you got to go over to Deannabelle at Sterling, drop another 150, 200 grand for motors, and that got you one clean set. Now you need a test set or a spare,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then that's all good. You got that all set up. You're at the race, and then you realize I don't have a propeller for this stuff. I'm in Cocoa Beach. It's 8 feet. It's 8 feet out there. I need 35s, and then
You
you get
shoulda
to St.
called him,
Clair
he
and you
would've
need
fixed it.
42s, and you need so now you need 100 grand worth of propellers.
Yeah.
How in the world do you afford to race that class? Like it's just crazy to me that happens.
Well, I saw what they did, and that's why I was happy we were in our class
Right.
where we could handle what was dealt to us.
Right.
You know, I mean, I would I'd tow the thing down to Florida or wherever we're going behind my van, and then we eventually got a dually, put a 330 Mercruiser in it. Way to go! And
Like a dream.
like
Yeah.
a dream. Yep.
Well, you know, I think that's the reason why Reggie was so successful. He built boats for the average guy that, you know, it wasn't out of reach for the average guy.
Right.
And
He kept it reasonable.
And I was running on the Tar River with him. It was at a 38 or something, 42. I forget what it was. But it ran 86 miles an hour. He's running the boat and runs 85. He says, "You want to run it? Get over here, Mrs. Schroeder, and take it out for a ride." Okay, so I took it out for a ride, and he's next to me. I got it to 86. I beat him by 1 mile an
Right.
hour. And he says, "We'll put you on the fountain race boat team." You know?
I'm gonna put you in the world's fastest, safest fountain power boat. He's
That's
got that
him.
whole spiel. I love him, man. That's how we
He
ended
was
up with
great
one.
for the business.
Yeah, yeah. He was the next Don. You know, and he's the reason why we're here. We were racing that old Viper, and Carbonell at the time, John Carbonell that ran SBI. We were running Class 3.
What is SBI?
Superboat International?
Superboat, yeah.
It's what OPT I think eventually became.
It's like a bunch of races.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he had a big series.
He was he was from Key West, wasn't he?
Yes. Yep.
He did.
He raced a boat called the
Installer.
Installer.
Yeah, he
It
was a
wound up
carp-
in Europe.
He was a carpet installer.
Except it took the long way. That sunk somewhere in Florida and came up somewhere in Europe.
Oh,
But they were running Class 3 with him, and at the time that was a 90-mile-an-hour class, and that 32 Viper was hard to beat in that class because with horsepower, whereas not where you guys were running all the same power, where we could go build
yeah.
800-900 horse.
Sure.
So with those boats up against like the 38 Donzies of the day with the step bottoms, and that boat would get to the turn and just come around those buoys at speed. You never even saw it go by you, you know. And so they were just having a blast with that. They were way out in front in Marathon, Florida. And me and my mom at the time, we had a navigator that was John Hagen, who ended up building what Geico became. That was his team before it was Geico. And so he would rent the helicopter because my mom's deal was, you guys can keep running this crazy open thing as long as I can see you. You know what I mean? So Hagen, as a joke, starts bringing in helicopters. Well, now Mama can see us, so we can keep racing, right? So we're up in the helicopter, and the helicopter's slightly in front of the Viper, and the Viper's coming on strong, and the helicopter at this point is now in full pitch, no doors on it. It's wide open. The R-44, you know, helicopter running 102, 103 with no doors on it. That's all it's got. And the Viper's out running it. My brother got bored and started racing the helicopter. Well, he gets disqualified and moved up to Class 2. Now, Class 2 was a funny deal because you had at the time Bob Oliver, who was running a Firewater. It was called Firewater Apache. It was 47, triple engine, you know, real serious rig. And Herb Stotler built the motors for that one too. So we're racing against him in now 105-mile-an-hour class, outgunned by probably 15 feet, right? And they were winning. So at that time, your buddy Stanch wound up with a crazy deal where he had the Syntron fountain. You see pictures of that? It was all silver, 42. He had that with a pair of 1250 blower motors in it. And he came after my old man in Class 2 with the Viper in Reggieville and down in North Carolina there. And my old man held him off until the last lap, last straightaway, got a little loose, burned off all the fuel, and trying to run that 105. Started a chime walk, and Stanch got him at the end. Reggie came up and said, "Boy, I fly over my fountain power boats every race. This race, I flew over you the whole time." He figured for sure my old man was going out, you know. So he made him a deal, and I'll tell you, I won't talk numbers, because personally I don't know, but I know it was like half of what they were worth just to get my old man in something safer. You know, like Reggie was the Don of our day,
Right.
You know,
right.
it wasn't for him
Yeah,
a
he
lot
was
of
the name really of the boat builders. Let's see, Larry Smith on the West Coast made the Scarabs.
yeah,
And
my personal favorite,
yeah, that's what the Indigo is. It's
Yeah.
not a Larry Smith; it's a Wellcraft.
right?
They added that much to the freeboard or whatever you want to call it there.
Yeah. I put it to you like this. I've never been in a Larry Smith built boat and didn't like it. I love all of them.
They were
that guy.
29. They were 29s. Ours was 30.
Right.
So that extra 6 inches in the front gave you the 30. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, Larry built a 26, a 29, and a 33, I believe.
He
31.
He knew what he was doing.
Oh, he was unbelievable. Another guy right up your alley, the Bottoms. Bottom was everything.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
right.
But yeah, there's been a couple phenoms in the sport, but few that took hold like Don or Reggie or Pete, up at Skater, or,
Well, yeah. There were some guys that were fair. They were good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that household name is a hard thing to get to. Like Don or Reggie or
Sure.
it's hard. It's hard. Like
Yeah, it's true.
even look at like Fabio. Look at Fabio Bussi and all the things that he accomplished and never ever caught on over here. It's
No.
hard. It's hard.
Was that Favor Shoes?
No, he's
Who was that?
no, that was
We would call him Fabio. I don't know.
no. Fabio is he's
Italian.
Italian guy. He had
Fabio
a lot of
Buzzi?
designs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Buzzi.
Yeah.
I tried to follow him out the inlet in Miami at a show. I was in a Scarab,
Right.
and he was in some inflatable piece.
Yep. Always with diesels in it.
Yep. I can smoke him. Oh my God.
Yeah, they ran, man.
He was out of sight before I hit the throttles down. I was like, I'm not going out in that big water like that. I'll break this thing in two.
That's right.
Yep.
So yeah, he was an interesting guy.
Yeah,
Very
it's a shame.
talented. Very talented.
He passed in an accident. A year or two ago? He was
Did
in
he?
that. Yeah,
I
he
didn't
was-
know that.
accident?
Yeah, they were running in at night and didn't see a rock jetty, and that was the end of them. But yeah, it's a shame because that guy turned in quite a life's work. I mean,
yeah.
that he built some awesome stuff. He raced against my old man in Key West one year. The coolest thing is the boat showed up in a container, right? Because it came over from
Yeah.
from Italy. So they get there and they open the back of the container. This thing rolls out the back and it's not done. It's sitting there. There's no motors in it. There's nothing. They finished it in the pits that night and went and won the Worlds with it the day after. I mean,
Wow.
it's just so yeah. I mean, like the household name. There's a lot of people that do this at a high level, but for whatever reason, you got to have that extra. What they call it.
Yeah.
Like Don, Reggie,
sure.
they had it. They could sell you anything.
You got to be a salesman.
Yeah.
First, you really do.
Yeah.
And then if you can get some guys that know what they're doing to help you out, you got it made.
Yeah. Which they all had.
Yep.
That's right, they did.
They all had great teams,
how
even
you-
like yourself at Mercury. I mean, Mercury's not one man. Mercury's a gigantic, well-oiled machine.
You figured that out pretty quick when you start to see the amount of talent that's there, and they kind of hit him up in Wisconsin there for a while. But the racing guys, it was desire, trying to make it better, and there was a bunch of folks that did the right stuff. Then they had moved stern drives out of Fond du Lac and back into Stillwater, Oklahoma, and even those guys, there's some cowboys down there. They could show you how to put it together right.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, and your R&D department, is what Mercury spends in just braking stuff is insane.
Well, if you were to see it now, it's probably about 1.25 miles from the first time you see the building to the entrance.
Right.
And it's the big thing now is NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness.
Right.
And if you run any of the new outboards, you can't hear them run.
No, not at all.
They introduced a 600,
Yep.
and the engine doesn't turn.
Right.
The gear case turns.
Yep.
And it's got a 2-speed transmission in it.
Yeah, that's a wild setup, man.
And it's a V12.
Yeah.
And the block is theirs. I mean, it's Mercury's.
Yeah, and I know they're primarily designed for like big sport fish applications, stuff like that. But they're even coming out with that 500 Verado, I believe. They came out with the next step from the 450. I think it's a 5.
It is a 500.
Yeah, and like that, like this is how crazy Mercury's gotten. They come out with the 600 and the 500 at the same time. Nobody even talked about the 500.
No.
Like it's crazy. Like the amount of stuff that they just come out with every year is insane.
The idea behind everything they do at Mercury is to come out with something new every 90 days.
Right.
And that was an edict that came down from now the president of Brunswick. Every 90 days you're coming out with something.
Right.
And
It's good. It drives the spirit of innovation, man.
Propellers, electronics, 600s. Now you take that 12-cylinder 600 and put a blower in it.
Right.
Stay tuned.
I just wonder, like, I wonder,
tuned, right?
there's two things I want. I wonder when the turbo outboard's coming. Like, everything to this point's been a supercharger. I'm wondering when they figure out the turbos. And I'm also wondering when they can finally put enough power through that midsection lower unit to start playing with some real horsepower. Like, not that it's not real horsepower, but when you look at, like, the biggest outboard you can buy is a 600, that's a fairly mild big block build. But once Mercury figures out that midsection to lower unit and all those components, you'll start to see what those outboards are capable of. I mean, I've talked to quite a few people that have let me into some pretty neat stuff. It's pretty wild.
Well, if
you're
you-
sworn to secrecy, but
You are. If you ever get a chance and you're in central Wisconsin, you need to stop in there and have somebody give you a tour.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
I would love to.
Propellers, blocks, engine assembly. Even on the engine assemblies, they come in at different heights. So if there's a female on the line and she can't reach the top of the block, it'll actually drop it down to her level, so it's right at eye level, so she can work on that stuff.
It's incredible.
Yeah, they a lot of CNC stuff now.
Yeah.
A lot of it.
I see even the propeller works all going that way.
Oh,
CC, you know, everything. It's crazy stuff. But what you got there, hon?
We got 2 hours.
2?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. You got anything else for me, Liz?
No, there's
No?
other. I mean, I could talk forever, but no.
Well, we can do part 2.
We'll do a part 2 some. I'll bring Robbie up the next day. He has to go back to Florida.
Yeah, back to paradise. I
Tomorrow.
don't feel bad for you.
It's a bummer, but
I'll bring Robbie up, and he knows all mechanical stuff too.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, sounds
we'll
good
make
to me.
another day. I'll touch base with Christian and all
Yeah,
that.
and I'll get my computer straightened out so we don't have so many breaks.
But I want you to take a look at the pictures in there.
We will, and I'm going to take some pictures if you don't mind,
No,
so that
not
I can
mine.
use them for the
You
feed
mean
and everything.
take pictures of the pictures? Yeah.
Yep, that way I can use them in the feed. and
Sure.
Got them up for everybody.
You're
All
more
right.
than welcome. Yep. We done?
Yeah, we're done. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming
Show
in.
business was fun.
That
Thank
was
you.
Offshore Live 13. Thanks for watching, folks.